everyone versus everybody versus the Celestial Dragons and world government, and that flow sort of segues into and that includes Luffy fighting Akainu, and then that sort of segues into the final big bad of the story, which would be the Blackbeard Pirates and the Straw Pirates versus the Blackbeard Pirates, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, I hope you guys found that interesting. Really, really curious to see the reactions to this video. And I don't know if people will be upset or people will find it really cool. But yeah, with that, I will talk to you all later. All right, everybody, what is going on? What is going on? What is going on? How we doing? How we doing? Hello, hello. What is going on? Shoot, let me send this shit. All right. Oh, did I change the stream time too far back? Am I like super early right now? Hold on. I feel like I might be super early. Super early. Hold on. There we go. Bro was talking to no one. I was recording the Morgecast for the week. I was wrapping up recording on the Morgecast. So don't worry about that. If you want to worry about that, you can catch everything I just said on the Morgecast tomorrow. Because this is what will be going up with tomorrow's video. Give me a second here. All right, there we go. There we go, there we go. The fuck? All right. All right. How does it feel to talk to a screen for 2 hours? It feels weird. No, actually, it doesn't feel weird. It's like, that's a good question. That's actually a very good question. Because now it doesn't feel weird. I don't know why I said it feels weird. Now it doesn't feel weird, but it feels like you're... I don't know. It's actually very hard to describe. It's very hard to describe. It doesn't feel like you're alone, if that makes sense, but you are obviously physically alone. So it's just it's a weird feeling. It's a weird feeling. It feels like, you know what it feels like? It feels like you're shit. I guess talking to the way you can talk on stream actually feels very freeing in a sense, because it feels very freeing, and other people who stream I've talked to about this also kind of say this, because let's say you're talking to like a crowd. If you're talking to a crowd, then there's, you know, physical reactions, you can actually see the people in faces and stuff. But streaming feels like it's just like a license to allow yourself to just stream a consciousness, just talk. And you're getting everybody's feedback and their responses and everything like that. But it's kind of like, because it's just text, right? It feels like you're getting people's feedback and responses, but you're still feeling a sense of like, just everything is very... like you know that people are there because they want to hear you talk or you engage, so you don't feel any sort of like it just feels like a very uninhibited sort of stream of consciousness sort of setup, because it's just text responses and stuff like that, you know what I mean? It's actually very difficult to explain, but it's I guess it feels like a very relaxed way of being able to speak to a large group of people. It's hard to explain. Yeah, because it feels like we're having conversation when you're talking, but you know, you're by yourself. Yeah, it's just a weird feeling. Big the Boss says, Morge, have you passed your physical prime? Have I passed my physical prime? I'm 30 now. I actually recently just turned 30. So, I don't know. I feel like technically your physical prime is like mid-late 20s or something like that. But I'm also in much better physical shape, at least fitness wise, right now than I was a few years ago. A few years ago, I was probably much more consistent with doing gym workouts, so like weightlifting. But now, in terms of uh, like now I do boxing usually a couple times a week, right? So like I've got more, and I still do some weightlifting just to stay somewhat in shape. So I think overall my fitness is probably better right now. Morge watch Neza. I think it's what the ending of Onigashima Raid should have been. Maybe even Goda inspired him, was inspired by it, but couldn't pull it off in the end. Neza 1. Ah, interesting, because I know there's a Neza 1 and 2. He's exactly at his physical prime at 30. Is 30 your physical prime? I think it depends how you treat yourself at 30. Because, like, for example, um, in the past, people would people would like athletes would usually hit their physical prime like maybe mid 20s, late 20s or whatever. But now athletes are like 30 is kind of like a midway point for your career almost. That's not that no 30 is still like you're probably in your you probably started the final act of your no. I'd say like now looking at it, right? Cuz like professional athletes, let's say they hit the scene at like 20 or something, but now you see a lot of them play till damn near 40. Like not everyone's hitting like 40 like LeBron and Jokic or not Jokic, Djokovic and stuff, but it's less and less uncommon, you know? Um so now I'd say like 30 is maybe like you're reaching the 60% mark of your athletic career. Dr. Farewell says, what age was prime LeBron? I mean, I think people say that LeBron's peak athleticism was in his early 20s, but then he was obviously a lot bigger and stronger in Miami, so it depends what you call his physical prime. Phil Leotardo, thanks for the 5. That animal Garling, I can't even say his name. I'd expect more out of Shamrock, but I guess the turd doesn't fall far from the fraud's ass. Whoa, what the fuck? That was really aggressive. By the way, for this stream topic, I should clarify. We're only doing dead flashback characters. We're not doing flashback characters that are still alive, like Kuma. Dead flashback characters. Let's get stream likes up to 50 real quick. Mahdi's Corner says UFC fighters are generally in their best years 32 to 35. That's interesting. I wonder why that is. I feel like that's because UFC is like athleticism matters, of course. Athleticism matters, but um, it is a sport where like your skill and experience are generally going to matter more, and that's obviously going to accumulate over time, you know? Um, because UFC, boxing, those aren't sports that are like hard testing your like fast twitch abilities as much. Like for example, if you're in the NBA, right? Like how fast you can run, how high you can jump, all of that. That's stuff that's like a football, right? Same thing. That's all like hard tested early on. Um, but yeah, UFC boxing, it's less about pure athleticism. So it depends on style to some degree too, because like I know a lot of people say that I don't know a ton of boxing lore, by the way, because I'm just starting to get more into it. But you know, I've been learning somewhat. So like, for example, someone like Mike Tyson, his style was really really good when he was like literally like the younger he was, the better. Like genuinely, he was probably at his peak when he was like 20, which is kind of insane, right? Because his boxing style was all about like you needed the fastest possible reactions, the most explosive ability and everything, and that's like at its peak, like very early on. So that's why he fell off as he got older and older for a variety of reasons. But that style doesn't work as well without like it's really primed for you to be at your most fast and most explosive, right? But then you look at somebody like Lennox Lewis, who was really good in his later years, right, like 30s and everything like that, because his style was more methodical, technical, and so it was about like him having a lot of experience, strategy, stuff like that. Uh, Carnage, thanks for the 2. If Garp had joined Roger, would he be the vice captain? Um, yeah, yeah, of course. They wouldn't just make him like captain of the Roger Pirates. Um, but that's also like a case of like generally you can't have, it's hard for Conqueror's hockey users to make themselves subordinates to others, right? Because Garp and Roger are like pretty much equal. Garp would be co-captain lol. He's not taking second place to anybody. Well, I mean, that right there is the real issue because, like, it's not just about Garp being part of the Marines or whatever. He's not gonna accept being second place to anybody, and certainly not Roger. And that's the bigger reason why he would just never be a part of Roger's crew. It depends on the sport. Baseball player plays a lot older than a soccer player usually. Yeah. Zuko9 says slipping punches is pretty fundamental and it's super dependent on reaction and explosive movement. Yeah, that's why Mike Tyson's style, which is, again, I don't know a ton, but from what I've seen, like it's a peekaboo style where basically like it's really cool. It's trying to be as aggro as possible. Like you just like charge in to the opponent's like storm of punches basically, and you're just moving, bobbing and like you're moving, bobbing and weaving and like defending and just like dodging point blank to get as close in as possible, and then exploding, basically from what I've understood, like exploding like a spring right into them with as much power and like just unleash a combination that will just beat them right away. But you can only do that if it's like you gotta basically be able to do ultra instinct to try and get in that close and then just destroy them. It's pretty cool. And that doesn't work if your ultra instinct, if your observation hockey is a bit off, because then you're just eating punches. Diptio Trevisa, thanks to the 2. You think we could have a first world flashback? Do I think we could have a first world flashback? I think we will. But that's the confusing thing because I feel like a Void Century flashback can definitely be successful because, so like the God Valley flashback was obviously one that we'd all been forward to for a long time, right? Because it's all the characters that we know or have heard about, right? Whitebeard, Kaido, Big Mom, characters that we know, Rox, Roger, like Garp, obviously, Garp, Rayleigh, Gaban, Shaki, all characters that we know, and then Rox, a character that we've heard of, Roger, a character that, has been in modern day a little bit, but not really. Like, it's a flashback filled with familiar faces, all in their youth. That's exciting to see, right? The Void Century will be tricky because it will be dependent on... Emu is the one character we know from there. But then we also know Emeth, we also know Zunisha, right? It's more removed. But we will also, the interesting thing is, we're also going to be seeing the ancestors of a lot of characters that we know of today, right? So it's kind of like with the Nolan Kolgara flashback, even though we were seeing brand new characters, in Kolgara you can see a lot of similarities between Kolgara and Wiper, right? Like, so it's not the craziest thing. Like, if you think about it, we're going to see Law's ancestor, right? We're going to see Saul's ancestor. We're going to see characters that are honestly very familiar to a lot of modern day characters, and people will like that. So I think the Void Century flashback, and then Joy Boy, of course, people are going to be very interested in seeing Joy Boy. So the Void Century flashback, even though it's kind of like, it's an interesting experiment in that it will likely be, unlike the Skypiea flashback, which was technically pretty short, probably like somewhere between 5 to 8 chapters, I forget. The Void Century flashback is probably going to be closer to the God Valley type, or the Rocks flashback that we've had so far. Pretty long. But I think it can still be successful, maybe even very successful, just because even though it's more far removed from the names and faces that we know, I think the similarities will be there, and then the trace elements that we do recognize will be there that we will enjoy it, right? I wouldn't be surprised if Lily is like very similar to Vivi, for example, right? But then you get to the first world, and that's where I'm like really curious, because that's something we didn't even know. Forget like knowing characters from there. We didn't even know the first world as a concept existed until just recently. So first world flashback will be very, very difficult. You know what? Here's what I think. I think we will get the first world flashback in the Void Century flashback. I think it'll be a case of we're getting the Void Century flashback, and then during that time, maybe in that era, they're studying history as well, and then we get like a little bit, either a lore drop or something of what happened before this, or we get the flashback within it. I think that might be a good way to do it. But I don't know. I would never have expected the current Rocks and God Valley flashback to have happened in the middle of the Elbaf flashback. That was a huge surprise. Very, very welcome surprise, of course, but huge surprise. And here's one thing. Hold on. Before we get to the thing. That's why I want to learn about it? Yeah. But then remember, sales are also a thing. So, like, you never know how much freedom Oda will have to do. Just because keep in mind, we're not casual viewers, we're pretty invested viewers, right? So our interests don't necessarily reflect the casual fans. And because people, I think, really don't understand what it means to be like a casual fan. I think people really don't get that. A similar example is like, I'm a casual fan of like My Hero Academia. I've realized. I've actually started tuning in to watch, like, because I know it's the final arc and stuff. So I started tuning in to watch, season 7, and I'm watched season 7 and then the final season 8, right? So I'm partway through season 7. I'm watching it, but I don't feel bothered to go back and like get the full context. So I've skipped a lot of the previous arc thing. I think there was some arc where like Deku was going around being a vigilante or some shit. I forget. Skip that. I just tuned in because I heard there's good action going on, right? Similar for Jujutsu Kaisen, mild spoilers. There was a big fight that took place. I'd stopped reading Jujutsu Kaisen after the Shibuya incident. Stopped reading it for a long time. Then a certain fight began. That was a very hyped up fight. And around that time, I just tuned in for the weekly reading experience because you heard so much buzz about the fight. I didn't feel like going to binge everything before that. But I tuned in to watch the fight, okay? A lot of people were like that. A lot of people tuned in to watch that fight. Just like there's going to be a lot of people who are, they're just flipping, trying to pick something to watch. It's like, well, we hear my hero's in its big final battle. Let's tune in and watch that, right? That might sound crazy to people who are like heavily invested. Like, I think it'd be crazy if you just jumped into One Piece out of the blue for the final war or something like that. But that's the reality of like what casual viewer base means, okay? So keeping that in mind, for us, the invested readers, a flashback focused on like the first world would be really cool because we get information and reveals and all of that stuff, right? But is that going to be really good for sales in general for One Piece? Like, is a casual reader who's flipping through like a volume of a recent One Piece volume or something going to be like, I literally don't recognize any of these characters or anything that's going on here? Are they going to buy that? I don't know. So that's something to consider. Stormy says, I'm sure One Piece will sell regardless. That is, yeah. No, of course One Piece... it's not like One Piece isn't going to sell. It's not like Oda's going to be like, oh, I'm fucking broke now because I did... I can't believe I did that first world flashback for 5 chapters and now the whole thing's just collapsed and nobody's buying my shit anymore. They're all... I'm fucking broke now. I'm sure that won't happen, but... everybody judges their decisions based on what's relative to how things have been going for them so far. Tapio Treviso, thanks for the 5. About ancestry, would you prefer Luffy's ancestry to not be Joy Boy's, but rather some other D member that we don't know about, and Joy Boy is Ace's ancestor? It's a good question. It's a good question. The thing is, I'm pretty sure it's gonna be Joy Boy's ancestry, Joy Boy's lineage. I wouldn't be surprised if the same way that Rocks hid his actual name, the Davy lineage, that I wouldn't be surprised if the Monkey D lineage turns out to not actually be the Monkey lineage, but they changed their name or some shit. I would not be surprised. Interesting. maybe the Portgas line and the Monkey line are actually they're actually the same lineage. It's just kind of separated over time. Maybe it's no, not the Portgas line. Rogers line. The goal, I guess, would be the goal line. Um, yeah, maybe those two lines separated. Maybe Garp and Roger are from the same common ancestor, just 1,000 years ago. And that's not the craziest thing, you know. I'm talking about what you want. What do I want? That is what I want to learn about it. Yeah, I would like some first world stuff. I would like some first world stuff. Definitely for sure. I mean, like, it's in there. It's going to be important. Shanks is from the Joy Boy line. Do you even want Shanks to be a D? I kind of don't want Shanks to be a D, personally. I feel like I kind of get annoyed every time a character is revealed to be a D at this point. Like, now I'm more like... Now I think it's cooler when a character is really strong and is not a D. That's where I'm at. That's what I've reached, personally. Pina, thanks for the 2. Joyboy will be red hair. Gold plus Monkey are his wings. Oh, shit. Are we getting into this? All right. Gold plus Monkey are his wings. I just don't know if Monkey is going to be... I feel like Monkey... Here's the thing. I think Joyboy, whatever his clan's name is, I think that's been changed. Because you saw how pissed everybody was at the Davies and how focused Emu was on, like, I have to eliminate the last of the Davies, right? But Rox even teases, like, who do you fear more? Joyboy or Davy Jones, right? And then we obviously saw Emu's reaction previously to Joyboy's Hockey Knot, right? So Emu should realistically hate and fear Joyboy's line just as much as Davy Jones's, right? So to me, that suggests that whatever Joyboy's lineage is has been removed from history. That's my guess. Snap, thanks for being a yonk... removed or changed, sorry. Like the same way Rocks changed from the Davy name for protection. I assume that's going to be the same here. Snap, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 38 months. Hey, Moji Boy, I'm so happy. I got a very cheap ticket to Japan and will visit my girlfriend, not seen in half a year. You also need to read Kingdom. Oh, man, I really do want to read Kingdom, by the way. Is Kingdom going good right now? Like, here's the thing. I feel like I don't hear that much buzz about Kingdom nowadays. I remember there was a period of time, I think, maybe it was like when the big coalition war was going, that people were going nuts over Kingdom. But now I don't know. Also, there was one thing, this was like years ago. This might have been like 2019 or 2020. I think around then, there was some controversy where like Kingdom introduced, sorry, I'm seeing some. The Kingdom introduced some new elements that were like supernatural elements or something, and then people got upset. But I might be wrong. I'm still wanting to get into Kingdom. So, and congrats on going to see your girlfriend. I'm happy that you were able to score a cheap ticket. Yeah, are you going to get to stay there a good amount of time? I imagine you probably wish you could just be staying there right now. You know what's interesting? Because speaking of Kingdom, and Kingdom is, takes place in China. So I was looking through more Donghua stuff. China really, and Neza was mentioned earlier in this as well, right? So with Chinese Donghua, I was looking through like the best Chinese Donghua and stuff like that. Here's the crazy thing. China has like Donghua are like Chinese animated shows, okay? They have like some absolutely amazing animated shows, but they're 3D animation. I don't personally really like 3D animation. That's not my thing. But they've got like their whole ecosystem of like crazy high budget, like super long, like shows that have been going like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of episodes. Like really gigantic long running series that are hugely popular in China. They follow like a common term, like you kind of know how like I think they follow a certain common term, which is like cultivators, which is basically like stories of, they follow similar tropes, which is like stories of like heroes who have to cultivate their power over a long period of time, very similar to shonen stuff, but you see in so many Chinese show descriptions, it's like, this is a cultivator, one of the best cultivator stories, stuff like that. So it sounds like it's similar to shonen. A lot of them seem to focus on like cosmic power hierarchy and stuff like that. It just seems like it has a very rich history, and like there's crazy high budget shows that they've got going on over there that are, epics similar to One Piece and stuff like that. But it's 3D, and that's just not my thing. And I was looking into it. Why is 3D the norm for China and Chinese animation? And I guess it's just a cultural thing, but it seems like 2D animation is considered sort of cheap, or like, lesser than 3D animation over there, which I just think is so fascinating, because I can see the logic. Because if you look at like film, right? Since the 2000s, basically 2D animation got slapped, right? And was just like, we're done with that now. 3D animation, that was where movies really shifted to. And it kind of did shift towards like, there were some good 2D animated movies that would come out in the early 2000s. I think like, like Treasure Planet and like stuff would come out that was good, but it probably just didn't look as innovative or high quality or whatever as the crazy new 3D stuff that's coming out, like The Incredibles, like Monsters Inc., obviously the Toy Stories. That's really interesting because 2D animation was able to survive largely in the West through TV, right? TV is still the space for 2D animation. And then Japan has always stuck with 2D animation, right? I prefer 2D animation to 3D animation in general. I think that there are works of 3D animation that are really visually really beautiful, but I'm always going to find 2D animation to be much more for me. I find it more fantastical, more dreamlike. It captures my imagination more. I like things that feel a little bit more detached from reality, a little bit more like, a moving painting. That's what I find beautiful. I still do find lots of 3D animated works, Pixar stuff or whatever. I do still find a lot of it visibly beautiful, visually beautiful. I don't know where my words are today. But I'll always prefer 2D. But again, I'm going in long, it all connects here, okay? So I'm just wondering kind of like how the West also did have this sort of shift where suddenly 3D animation took over and 2D animation began to look cheap when it came to films, right? Specifically, right? Movies. I wonder if China kind of had that in their animation industry, but it extended to their anime, like their shows as well, like their Donghua. I wonder if that's partly the case. Why, if they've got so many shows coming out with like really, really top class cinema quality 3D animation, then maybe a 2D anime or whatever, they just don't view it as good, right? So I thought that's really interesting because there's this gigantic treasure trove of anime-esque stories that are like top quality production, maybe like probably bigger budget production and like higher effort production than what Japan produces, but it's all inside this Chinese bubble, and it's all focused on 3D rather than 2D, and therefore like separates itself even further from crossing the boundaries into global popularity, right? The way that anime has. But that's why it's so interesting that recently China has begun dipping its toe into. I think it's going to be trying to break out and capture the global market with shifting towards 2D anime, because that's why the two shows that came out this year, To Be Hero X and Lord of Mysteries, that's why they were. I was so surprised. I was like, why haven't I seen more Chinese animated shows? It's because they've generally been 3D, not 2D. But now they're trying to shift their efforts, or a lot of studios are trying to shift their efforts over to producing 2D as well. So I think like those shows, it's harder for them to break out, not because of the animation quality, because the animation quality is literally as good as like UFA table stuff, right? But because I think the culture is not just there yet. I think in the next 5-10 years, it's very possible that Chinese anime will overtake Japanese anime as being more popular. Not just like storytelling stuff, I still feel like Japan I prefer. But obviously I've only seen a few Donghua so far. But the tricky thing is the quality is going to be crazy, crazy, crazy high. Like, if Chinese studios keep producing animated shows at the quality of To Be Hero X and Lord of Mysteries, I think that it'll be very hard for Japanese studios to compete after a time. Like they will look like seasonal anime. Sorry, they will look like weekly anime compared to seasonal anime. Like it'll feel like that sort of a gap. I think that's something that's coming at some point. Yeah, India gonna release an animated movie. Yeah, so I don't know. I used to know. I know I'm missing some supers. I'll catch this in a second. I was just continuing this thought. I was interested by that because it's called Bahubali. Bahubali. I don't even know how to pronounce it. Bahubali. But I realize now that Bahubali is also it's a live action thing. So that's what I'm so confused by. So it's already an existing thing that's live action. But now they're making an animated movie that I guess takes place in the same universe or something. It's based on Indian mythology, obviously, but specifically Hindu mythology. I just don't understand how it fits into the broader picture of the live action stuff, but I hope it's something that I can just drop into, that I can jump into and just be able to watch, you know? For Hindu mythology, I actually know quite a lot. Like, that was one of my main things growing up, because I would read these comics called Amar Chitakatha. Just Indian comics for that cover Hindu mythology, but like it's like action stories and stuff. So I do know a lot about that, but the stuff I saw in that trailer, I don't think it's. I would have to look a little closer as to what it's not based off of one of the main stories unless I'm missing something or misremembering something. Ender Anami, thanks for being a Pirate King tier member for 38 months. Monthly reminder to read Kagurubachi, even though you said your attention span is so fried, you're past the point of being able to read books, you can't even look at pictures now, and can only watch Jingling Keys, lol. Yeah, man, I'm at a point where I'd just be watching anime. I don't have the mental to sit down and read a manga, but I could read Kagurubachi. Kagurubachi or Kingdom is up next. Rihanna Sir, thanks for the 2. Yeah, I'm getting a little sick of Bloodline Piece 2. Carnage, thanks for the 2. If anything, Shanks' mom might be from the Davy clan. Yeah, that'd be cool. I think that's very possible. Oh, shit! Oh, my God! JWP, what the fuck? Holy shit! Oh, my God, man, what the fuck? What the fuck? Oh, my God. Thanks for coming through, man. Okay, everybody in chat, big shout-outs to JWP because he just gifted 20 memberships. Holy shit. Thanks a lot, man. Big W's. Everybody spam your new emotes and everything that you got out of this. Yeah, we... Holy shit. And we're still early in stream, so that means that actually, like, over 10% of viewers just got memberships. So, good stuff being early, everybody. Yeah, thanks for coming through, JWP. Really, really appreciate that, man. Of course. Yeah, big W's, everybody, for JWP. Everybody in chat, just say thank you. Yeah, just make sure to say thanks to JWP. He's always coming through with those. Really appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot. CC Rapalini, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 10 months, man. Hello, Mr. Morge. Congrats for your channel. If you could meet Oda, what would you say to / ask him? I might ask, like, how many... I might ask, like, realistically, like, is he required to give me an answer? Is he required to give me a correct answer? Because otherwise he might just... Hold on. If not, then he might... You good? Okay. Otherwise, he might just give a troll answer, like in an SBS. So I might ask something like... Like, if he has to give me an answer, I might just ask something like, how many more chapters do we have? Or, like, when's it going to end? Or something like that. You need help? Okay. Oh, I see. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I might ask something like that. We're just going to ask if Shanks or Miyako is stronger. It's okay. I'll get about it. I'm not going to lie. I did think of that as my first question. And then I was like, that's a stupid first question. But the reason I thought of it as a first question is because there's been so much discussion about it as of late. And so it's kind of just like... Because here's the thing. There's almost not... in terms of other questions... I'll get them out. Yeah. in terms of other questions, right? There's almost no point in asking because I feel like all other questions will be answered, you know? I feel confident that all other questions will be answered, so I don't want to know like how is this how is like what's Chopper's dream? How's his dream gonna be fulfilled and stuff like that. I feel like pretty much all other questions will be answered. I feel like lore questions will be answered as well. I don't have like a burning lore question that I don't feel will be answered. So then the things that I think are easiest to ask then become like simple power scaling things because then it's like, okay, well I don't want to spoil the story for myself, so let me ask something like who's stronger, like Kaido or Mihawk or something like that, or Kaido and Shanks, like questions that I think if they're going to be answered, it's going to be a frustrating wait for them. Whereas for other lore stuff, we'd have to wait. You take Oda as your canon source, yeah. I really might ask that to be honest. Yeah, but it's not just because I only care about power scaling. It's more so the other way around where it's like, well, that's the one thing I don't mind being spoiled on or something like that. Other things I'd rather experience through the story and like wait and see how they play out. Whereas it's just like, okay, answer one thing. It's like, okay, well, I'd probably ask the question that's been debated so much and so vocally in the community for so long, you know? Yeah, that's the thing. That's why I wasn't sure about asking about like when One Piece will end, because Oda could just troll and lie again, you know? Um, Ender says if he's required to give an honest answer, I'd ask him for the detailed outline of the original 5-year plan for One Piece. That's actually a really good question because then you can see the stuff that is most important to the story in a sense. That's why I've always felt like the further back you go, the more important. Like, I feel like the most important characters are the ones that he established early on, right? Like to me, obviously Roger, first chapter, but then Shanks, chapter 1. Mihawk, Dragon, Blackbeard, all of those things happen in the first 100, 200 chapters, you know? Henchme976, thanks for being a Yonko chair member for 7 months, man. Let's face it, Oda has no ability to gauge when he'll be done. His last 5-year target is already a fail. I vote 6 more years minimum from here. Okay, here's my take on it. I don't think that Oda is... I genuinely feel, and I did a whole video on this, I genuinely feel like Oda has a pretty damn good idea of like how he's pacing out his storylines. I think what he's not good at predicting, I think he's very good at guessing, because it's not even about guessing. Let me clarify. I think he is following a fairly strict outline for chapter counts for when he wants to complete the story by. I think there is a set chapter count that he wants to complete the story by, because you can trace back a lot of his story arcs to falling into certain intervals. I think he almost sticks to those chapter count intervals too hard because it leads to some storylines becoming particularly rushed with a lot of stuff like just like, okay, I didn't have time for these plot lines, didn't have time for these plot threads, these character threads, whatever, so they get binned, tossed in the trash can, right? I think Wano's a really good example of that. I think that's the big thing. That he has a good idea of like chapter wise when he wants to finish each storyline and when he's probably going to finish the whole story. What I think he's not good at guessing is like time intervals in real life, because in real life he takes so many breaks, right? And then lots of them are unexpected breaks. So I think that's where there might be a bit of a disconnect. I'm not sure. JWP, thanks for the 5. Also took one of my docs. Why is your message retracted? Who retracted JWP's message? Also took one of my dogs to the vet and they had her take drugs because she was too hyper and it was legit hilarious. Whoa, what? Lol, let me redo that super. You don't have to read. Just you can just comment it, man. Just comment it. Yeah, Sam saying thank you, JWP for the membership. Yeah, let me show you guys this. Here we go. Hold on. This is actually a good one to revisit. Here we go. What the fuck? So I'm pulling up one of my older videos. Okay, here we go. Let's take a look at this, everybody. Okay. So, looking at this is what I mean when I say that Oda actually has things pretty planned out. Oh, JWP says I redacted it. Okay. They had your dog take drugs because she was too hyper and it was hilarious. Did they mellow her out? Was it like actual drugs, like weed? Um, you know what's funny? I wonder if this person is watching right now. Okay, so this yesterday, if you're watching, shouts to you. Yesterday, I went to a local store that sells cannabis adjacent products, basically THCA, stuff like that, right? I used to go there for Delta 8. This time I went for THCA, okay? I actually kind of miss Delta 8. They say they don't sell that anymore, I think, because it's just not popular now. But I actually think I prefer Delta 8 for just casual smoking, I think. Just because it just has the mellowing effects without, like... I think I sleep better on that. I think with weed, I can not sleep as good sometimes. Anyway, I went to that store, and I walked in, and I've been to this store before, but it's probably been like a year or something. So I walk in, and then the guy that's behind the counter is looking at me, and at first I think it's like kind of rude because he's like has like a certain expression, and I'm like, "You guys sell THCA?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Why is he acting like it's weird that I'm asking this?" I'm like, "You sell indica?" Like, "Yeah." Like, okay, this is weird. It's like, okay, you do you have flour? It's like, yeah. I'm like, why is this guy acting like I'm a fucking weirdo for walking into a fucking, like, basically dispensary type store, and this is your entire product, it's selling THCA, and you're acting like I'm really weird for walking in here. And then we're at the counter, and he's like, I have a question. Do you watch One Piece? And I was like, oh, okay, never mind. I get it now. So that was bizarre because it just felt like I'd been caught. I don't hide that I smoke from you guys. I don't smoke super super often or anything like that. For me, it's like a weekend thing, particularly to sleep. But it did feel weird in real life. Just be like, it just felt like I was in trouble or something like that. I was like, oh fuck, like I feel weird actually buying from somebody that watches my videos and stuff. But he was very nice. He was very nice. He also threw in like a thing of gummies for free. That was really, really nice of him. But it was weird. You're a celebrity? No, I've not been recognized by people very often in my YouTube career. Like it happens pretty rarely, like genuinely very rarely, such that it's like always a surprise that it happens. Like it's like a thing that's not in your head or anything like that, and then once in a super duper blue moon, like rarer than a blue moon or whatever, then like maybe I run into somebody that knows me or something, and then it's like a weird just reminder that, oh, there is a chance that you run into somebody who knows you from YouTube in real life, because I prefer that it feels separate for me. That I prefer that sort of separation, but it'll be so random and so rare that it's always a surprise. I'm never walking around being like, oh, I wonder if someone's going to recognize me from YouTube or so. That's never a thought in my head, because it's genuinely not like something that's common. So that's why when it's in a very surprising spot, like I'm buying THCA in a store, and then the person behind the counter watches One Piece and my videos and stuff, that's always a surprise. Yeah, that's what I said. I wonder if he's in chat though. I don't know if he was like a invested viewer or anything like that, because there's obviously layers, right? There's people who've seen me maybe casually some of my videos or something. Then there's people who are regular, long-time viewers. And then there's people who come into streams and everything. So there's a bit of a funnel to that. But I don't think that was the case. Where are we at? Anyway, okay. So here is... let me make this a little bit smaller so you guys can see. Okay. So looking at this, right? Looking at this. What do we got? What do we got? Okay, yeah. So, as you can see, we got 50 chapter chunks for pretty much everything. The story's pretty much divvied up. Since post time skip, the story's pretty much been divvied up into 50 chapter, like 50, 100, or 150 chapter chunks. You see, it's all 50 or 150, all right? Fishman Island, 50 chapters. Punk Hazard, another 50 chapters. Then Dressrosa, 100, right? So we got a nice 100 chapter chunk here, nice 100 chapter chunk here. Then Zoe and Hoke together, that's another 100, right? We transition from Dressrosa to Zoe at just about chapter 800, right? I think they're sailing away as of chapter 800. And then they're exiting Whole Cake at about 900. Right? Clear chunk there. Then, same thing here, right? Entire Wano arc, they're wrapping up. Wano, technically, it's actually, like, very exact. Because Wano, there's technically, what do you call? There's technically the little mini Reverie arc that happens first, right? And that ends at around chapter 908. And then Wano, they're leaving at 1048. No, sorry, 1058. So, whoops, I play. So it's exactly, Wano, they're leaving at 1058, so it's exactly 150 chapters for Wano, right? Then, I get an Elbaf. 1060. Yeah, so for this, I think it's going to be another 1050 or I think it's going to be another 150 chapter chunk. I think we'll be done with Elbaf around 1200, give or take maybe like 5 chapters or something. Yeah, this is where I now feel like I was incorrect. Because I felt like Laugh Tale and Final War had to be separate. Assuming that we're done with Elbaf at around 1200... Assuming we're done with Elbaf around 1200, I think that I think we transition into like one big final storyline. I don't think Laugh Tale and the Final War are split up anymore. So with that in mind, I feel like, yeah, I think like a 150 chapter stretch could do it. I think One Piece ending at around either 150, I think either 100, 150, or 200 basically. That's what I think. If Oda's trying to be cute, he might try and end the story at 1356 or something. Who knows? So I think Oda's been pretty on track. Like, I think he ended Wano exactly when he wanted to end Wano, which is like 150 chapters. I think he's like when he's been bad at estimating time, I don't think he's actually been bad. I think he's been bad at estimating maybe how many weeks he can write in a year, but I don't think in terms of chapter count he's been off. JW Super Chat message says basically just rank the Straw Hats strength-wise other than Monster Trio and Jinbei. JWP, I'm sorry I missed that. Sorry, give me a second. Just rank the Straw Hats strength-wise other than Monster Trio and Jinbei. I got Frankie, then Rob. I think this ranking... I think Oda's tried to keep the Straw Hats ranking pretty similar for a long time. Pretty standard. Here we go. Let me pull this up. If I were to do... Yeah, let's just pull up our latest chapter predictions thing. Where's that? Where's our latest chapter prediction thing? Man. The fuck? You know what? It doesn't matter. Okay, I'll just reuse this. Okay, if I were to do quick straw rankings, right? If I were to do quick straw rankings, I would say there's no need to. I mean, I think the top is pretty easy. I think it's Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, Jinbei, right? I know you said without those four, but I'm just like, why leave those four out, right? I don't think Oda's ever tried to like hide these rankings really. I think it's always been pretty clear. I think it's then Frankie, and then I think it's Robin, then I think it's Brooke. Um, I think he's always been very consistent with how he portrays all of these characters. Um, I think Frankie, then Robin, then Brooke. Then I know some people might argue that Robin is above Frankie now or something like that. I don't think that that's the case. Maybe people are getting because Demonio Fleur is really cool or whatever. I just think that Oda's always portrayed Frankie as like when Frankie was first introduced. You got to remember, he was portrayed as like similar to the Monster Trio. He kind of got like Jinbei treatment early on because a lot of people felt like Frankie early on was stronger than Sanji and maybe like would be competing with Zoro for the second spot or something. Because Frankie's first fight is him basically handing Luffy his ass, right? Like it's arguably a draw, but Frankie, like when he's introduced, he's a high difficulty fight for Luffy that Luffy genuinely struggles against. Then on the Sea Train, Frankie, in the Sea Train fights, Frankie outshines Sanji. He's kind of portrayed as stronger than Sanji over the course of the Sea Train. It's only once they get to Eni's lobby that Oda's like, okay, let's calm down. I was just playing. Now that things are serious, Zoro and Sanji obviously on a different level than Frankie, right? But it took some time to get there. But Frankie has always since then been portrayed as above Robin, kind of the crew's next biggest combat threat after Zoro and Sanji. Gets a lot more fights. Like Frankie Loki has a lot of just really good feats over the course of the post time skip. They're just not focused on. Because like in Punk Hazard, he basically like solos Doflamingo's officers that show up to take them out with almost zero difficulty. He just like Buffalo and Baby Five are sent, and they're like Doflamingo's like cleanup squad, and Frankie doesn't even know who they are. That's the funniest part. He literally doesn't even know what he's doing. Like he's just like, I'm just here to guard the island. I'm just some robot, and they're like, who the fuck is this guy? And Frankie just like beats their ass, and he's like, well, took care of these guys, but it was no big deal. And then Dressrosa, obviously Frankie had his fight with Senor Pink, but before that, Frankie actually had like a huge fight against all these characters. It was like Doflamingo's entire mid-tier squad, and I think Bastille was in there too, if I'm mistaken. Like, he really held down the fort there. He just eventually got overwhelmed. And then against Senor Pink, Frankie like went the manly route of not using any weapons or anything, right? Against Sasaki, Robin ultimately needed help against Black Maria. She was struggling with a lot of the fire stuff. She needed Brooke's help. You could argue, I think Robin could have done it herself if she started emptying the clip of everything she could do from the beginning. But yeah, I think Frankie taking out Sasaki, you could debate which one, like who is more impressive in which scenario or whatever, but you kind of also just look at their arsenals. Frankie's got way more. Like, I think he's at the very least a bad matchup for Robin. I think you could argue Frankie and Robin either way potentially right now, but Frankie can always upgrade a lot of his abilities. And I just do think he's generally portrayed as like more of a good fighter than Robin. Then I think there's a solid drop-off between them to Brooke, in that Brooke has pretty much no 1v1 wins. He has really good assist moments. Brooke has sometimes in the past, though, also been portrayed alongside the Coward Trio. So it's hard to say. You don't think Brooke is stronger than Robin? Brooke is, like, comically far off from Robin. Keep in mind, like I think, I don't want us to get, I'm not trying to, like, to lowball Robin here, because I think Robin's very strong. I just also think Frankie is very strong. But Brooke is nowhere close, because if you, like, a simple point of comparison is look at what Robin did to Hakuba. Right? Like, look at what Robin did to Hakuba. It's kind of a joke, you know? I don't think even if you wanted to argue Brooke versus Cavendish, Brooke versus Hakuba, right? Even if you wanted to argue that, I maybe you could make a good case for Brook. It's hard to say because he has some really good assist moments against some strong characters. But even if you did want to argue that Robin is like portrayed as absolutely stomping Hakuba, like it's not even close, you know? Morge hates Brook, LMAO. No, Brook is very strong. Here's the thing. If anyone hates Brook, it's Oda, because the simplest way that Oda could clear this up for us is just give Brook a 1v1 fight. I mean, I just look at their Black Maria fight, and I think it does suggest something that Robin was the one who fought Black Maria and not really, not Brook. Robin is missing armament hockey. If she has that, she's over Frankie 100%. I agree. If she got armament hockey, then she would actually be like a nightmare matchup. Depending on how Oda portrays it, she would become a nightmare matchup for a lot of characters, for sure. But the tricky thing is that I don't know if Oda is going to give Robin armament hockey, but it is clear that Oda is going to just keep upgrading Frankie over and over. Like, literally during the Onigashima battles, like during Frankie's fight with Queen, Sanji's fight with Queen, he's talking about how, oh, this rapid-firing laser, Frankie would be really broken if he got that, right? Like, Frankie has so much potential to upgrade very easily. Anyway, after that, I got Brook, and then here's the thing. So in the past, historically, it's been Chopper, and then Nami, and then Usopp. In the past, historically, it's been Chopper, Nami, Usopp. And I think Oda's even on record once said that Usopp will always be the weakest Straw Hat. I don't know if that's ever going to change. I don't know. Historically, it's been Chopper, Nami, Usopp. I think we're at a point in time where you could argue... you could argue Nami, Chopper, Usopp. I think that's a symptom of the fact that Nami has gotten a lot of upgrades. Like a ton of upgrades in the... Not a ton of upgrades. Well, let me think. Yeah, Nami's weird because she's gotten multiple upgrades because... obviously everyone came back with their time skip training upgrades, right? Everyone came back with that. But then after that, Nami also got another upgrade in Zou. Usopp gave her he upgraded her weapon in Zou again for some reason. And then she got another upgrade with Zeus. And the Zeus upgrade is just so crazy. I feel like if Nami and Chopper fought, I feel like Nami should beat him. It's weird because I feel like Chopper is supposed to be above Nami. Historically, it's always been like Chopper is actually a legitimately strong fighter. At least pre-time skip. Do we count Monster Point? Of course. At this point, Monster Point is Chopper's fighting form. Like, it's a standard form. Like, pre-time skip, Chopper was always portrayed as more of a fighter than Nami. And Chopper was always... The funny thing about Chopper was that you had the weakling trio with Chopper, Nami, Usopp, but Chopper was kind of the odd man out in that he didn't really belong there. Because, when push came to... in his opening arc, he already had a big win against, Wappo's number one soldier and everything. Unlike Nami and Usopp, you could throw Chopper into a fight and Chopper could, fuck shit up, right? In the Mr. 4 duel, in the battle against Baroque Works, Usopp and Nami were just, so out of their depth and running and screaming and crying their whole fights and, things just sort of worked out. But Chopper was actually able to squab and, fight with the... he wasn't out of his depth there. He's just scared, right? He just acts scared. He took out one of the priests in Skypiea. And a big example pre-time skip was in Water 7, Usopp got jumped by the Frankie family and got beat up and everything. And it was kind of just yeah, Usopp, that's just him. And Nami stayed back and everything. And it was Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, and Chopper who went to go fuck up the Frankie family. And it was just and it wasn't hard for Chopper. It wasn't like he was the odd man out there or anything like that. He fucked up the Frankie family, he stomped them the same as the Monster Trio, right? So there was a long period pre-time skip where Chopper's weakling aspect was more psychological than actual, right? He was actually very strong. Not Monster Trio strong, but nothing like Nami and Usopp, who legitimately, in a random fight against henchmen, they could potentially get fucked up if they don't have time to set up their shenanigans and stuff. Chopper was actually really tough. And then the thing that was kind of the kicker was Monster Point. because once Monster Point was introduced, there was a strong argument pre-time skip, and you can still argue this however you want to argue, that Monster Point Chopper was the strongest character in the Straw Hats pre-time skip. There's a very strong argument for that. Very, very strong argument, because he pretty much... like, the stuff that he did to Kumadori is kind of insane, right? Kumadori being only slightly weaker than Bluno. Only slightly weaker than Bluno. And Chopper basically Bluno'd him harder than Luffy Bluno'd Bluno. If that makes sense. Monster Point Chopper would still lose to Luffy pre-time skip just because of the matchup, because blunt attacks don't work on Luffy. But if Luffy didn't have that physical force immunity, then it might be a different discussion. So, anyway, historically, Chopper's been like that, right? I would argue that that continued post-time skip until we got further and further, and then Oda gave Chopper no power-ups. Usopp got an observation hockey moment. That might come back, we don't know. Nami obviously got multiple power-ups. So I think we're at a point where this might be the lineup. I wouldn't be surprised if end of story, however, we're back to Chopper being above Nami, because I think that's how Oda generally has liked to write it. It's just that in recent times, Nami's gotten a major power-up. So this is what I got right now. JWP thanks to the 2. It's sad that Nami and Chopper both zero diff Usopp. I think if like they had to fight out of the blue, I think it might be tricky, because like Oda sometimes just gives Usopp like a bit of BS leeway with those sort of things. It's like, well, he's managed to hang in there just somehow or the other or something like that. Fritz Frischbeer says Nami has insane damage output, but she's definitely the physically the weakest. Yeah. Here's the thing. So it's funny because I think it was on stream maybe that I even had this realization. This was a discussion that came up a lot earlier in some previous stream, which was like, Usopp and Nami, their fights are similar, right? Like, you would think that on paper. Their fights are similar. They have to use, like, they're always weaker than their opponents. They have to use tactics and stuff to figure out a way to win and create a strategy, yada, yada, right? But then I thought about it more, and it's like, their fights are similar at a base level, but there's one fundamental difference. They're actually opposites in a sense, because Nami is a glass cannon. Usopp is some sort of a reverse glass cannon. Okay? Because what a glass cannon is that you yourself are very fragile. You can't get hit, you can't take much damage, but you can output like crazy powerful attacks, right? To kind of make up for it. What would be the reverse of that? The reverse of that is Usopp. Usopp, unlike Nami, has terrible damage output. Absolutely terrible. He's always been bottom of the crew in terms of like finishing moves, and like that's why he's got his little slingshot. Even when he upgraded it to Kabuto, it still did like minimally strong attacks, right? Like just some gunpowder bullshit or whatever. And then post-time skip, it's become even more of a joke because he upgraded to fucking plants, which are not known for their power, like offensive power, and Usopp doesn't have offensively powerful stuff compared to the rest of the crew. But Usopp's the reverse of Nami in that he has very low damage output, but he does have insanely high durability. That's the funny thing. He's like, that's what allows Usopp to win fights. Because I thought about it. I'm like, Usopp is good at tactics and stuff like that, but it's not like he's Shikamaru or something like that who wins fights by like, okay, I'm going to stay back and like, I'm going to figure like I'm going to rely on wits and improvisation to like stay away and then figure out like the right move and the right strategy to make everything come together. Oda's simple strategy for Usopp fights is that Usopp is able to have time to come up with a plan because Usopp's durability is so comically high for the character. Oda basically writes it so that you can't knock the man out. Like, Usopp can take so much damage over the course of a fight. Like, he can get fucked up for like 35 pages straight is basically what happens usually. He gets fucked up for like 1.5 or 2 chapters, and then after he's like all bloodied and beaten and broken and beaten up and stuff, he's like, I got it. It's like some Courage the Cowardly Dog shit. It really is. It's like, I got it. I got the plan. And then he executes. That's how Usopp fights go. So it's like a tactician's fight, but Oda has the added benefit of like he can just have Usopp take a lot of hits. So it's not like Usopp always has to be operating like some sort of master genius. He just has to do it at the very end. But until then, Usopp will be fine because he can just get fucked up for like, 2 chapters straight, and it's okay. So Nami's the opposite, and that's why Nami fights can often feel really, really awkward because Nami is not a damage tank. She's not a damage tank, and therefore Oda has to find ways, usually. If you go back and read the Miss Doublefinger fight, or you go and read the Khalifa fight, Oda basically has to find very convoluted ways to make it so that the opponent is just choosing not to kill Nami for extended periods of time. In the Miss Doublefinger fight, it was like Miss Doublefinger really toyed with Nami and didn't really take her seriously, and she was kind of just walking casually. Like, it was a lot of just treating Nami very casually. And then once in a while, she'd try and do something a little bit more serious, and maybe Nami gets a little bit hurt, but she gets away. But that's the thing, like, Oda doesn't want to get Nami fucked up in a fight. Like, she'll take some damage, but it's not like Usopp damage, right? So it has to write the opponent being much more laissez-faire during the battle. The Khalifa fight, very similar. Khalifa literally, takes a break, goes and takes a bath in the middle of the fight. There's a lot of, BS where Khalifa's just, taking her time, not really trying to do anything to Nami. And then Nami even gets a lucky break with, Chopper breaking through and all of that stuff and, water getting splashed on her. So I think that's why Oda can sometimes have difficulty writing Nami fights, because it's either she can take out the opponent right away with Zeus or something or her lightning, or if it's meant to be a bit more elaborate, then Oda has to really stretch the bounds of logic to write a fight where the opponent is just not trying to hurt Nami for some time, giving her time to set up her shit. Usopp, it's the reverse, where Usopp will get fucked up, the opponent can beat up on Usopp for a long time, but it never really matters because no matter how long you beat up on Usopp, he will get enough time at the end of the day to come up with a way to defeat you, right? So again, Nami, glass cannon, that's why they're both hard to rate, because Nami, actual glass cannon, Usopp, a reverse glass cannon, where it's he actually can't do anything that lethal, but if you give him enough time, because he's got so much durability and he's such a damage tank, right? If you give him enough time, he will figure out something, some ploy that will hit you in your weak spot. Usopp is more reliant on hitting someone in a weak spot, I think, generally. And a little bit of psychological shit as well. More trickery. Yeah. Hold on. Give me a second here. Umair, thanks for the 2. Where is Usopp after the Elbaf buff? Hoping it happens. I think Usopp will probably always be last in the Straw Hats. I think, because Oda said he'd always be last. The one thought I had was that, if this was back when I thought there was a possibility that Usopp might die, I no longer believe that Oda would kill a Straw Hat. I think it just doesn't work. Yeah. So with Usopp, I think we will get a scene where Usopp, welcomes death or something like that, but doesn't actually die, And I think it'll be a really good scene as long as Oda doesn't try to pretend to do a fake death scene, okay? With Usopp, right? I think that back when I thought that he might die, I thought that in his final moments, maybe he'll because of hockey and stuff like that, maybe he would become a lot stronger and then die. But now I feel fairly confident Usopp won't die. So now I'm just I think the chances of him ever actually not being the weakest Straw Hat are very low. I do think end of story, I think Chopper will be back above Nami. I think end of story Chopper will be above Nami again. I think Chopper he hasn't gotten an upgrade in some time. I miss Chopper's pre-time skip human form. Yeah, the character is just, I don't know. Blamo, thanks for the 5. Hey, I've been a long-time supporter / Yonko fan, but fell off due to internships. Any thoughts on Zoro's role as the warrior fight figure that Luffy slash Joy Boy befriends. No worries, man. I'm happy that you're in stream right now and just hopefully having a good time. I appreciate the long time support. Fell off due to internships. Yeah, take your life and your career seriously for sure. In terms of Zoro as, I mean, he is the warrior. Are you saying that it's going to be a parallel with Joy Boy befriending Ryuma or something like that? Is that what you're suggesting? Zoro being a also is Tom in chat? I feel like Zoro. I don't know if that's like a specific archetype that is supposed to be a parallel between Luffy and Joy Boy because we don't know enough about the past with Joy Boy before, you know? Zoro is a warrior figure that Luffy befriended. He's the first one. But I don't know if that's supposed to parallel something with Joy Boy. I mean, we know that Joy Boy probably had a full crew and everything, so... but I don't know if that's what you're referencing. I don't know if there was any dynamic between Joy Boy and Ryuma or anything like that, like some people seem to think. But anything's possible, you know? Also, do we have Tom in chat? Is Tom here by any chance? If Tom is not here, then I will have to probably cut the tier list images here. Didn't Ryuma live 400 years ago? Yeah, but some people seem to think that it's connected to Joy Boy stuff. I don't know. What was I thinking? Water Morge? Yeah, I want water. What was I thinking? Oh, yeah. Okay, we need to pick out the characters that we want for this. Chess, thanks for, or not thanks, hold on. Chess, Morge, I saw your 10 months old 3-hour stream about the 30 strongest characters, where you give the sequences Roger, Whitebeard, Zebek, Garp. What do you think would be the current sequence after seeing God Valley? After seeing God Valley, I would do Rox, Herald, I feel like it's not right, because it's just like... I think the next time I do top 30, I'm just going to do... I think I'm going to do ties, because I think ties should be allowed. Because it's like, people are okay with doing ties for stuff like Dori, Brogi, Inuarashi, Nekomamushi, right? So I'm kind of just like... That should be allowed, I think, at this point. So I'm going to do ties for, like 1 and 2... 3, 4, yeah, I think I'm going to do that, right? So let's say Joy Boy, Emu, 1 and 2, right? Then I'd probably go, Rox and Herald, tie. And then I would probably just do Roger, Whitebeard, Garp, tie, you know? Their listing will just be in terms of, Roger, Whitebeard, Garp, I'll say tie. I think that's straightforward. King AP07 says Herald above Roger doesn't feel right, even though it's probably canon. Yeah, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right, but it doesn't feel right. But then the thing you got to remember is that like Herald was the just because it was like only a brief section of the story, right? Like we only got 30, like a half chapter to explain this. Herald was basically the king of the seas before any of it. Like he was the strongest dude on the ocean for hundreds of years, right? Like, the titles that go around now, like, okay, maybe Rox was the strongest pirate for a decade or so, and then, then Roger and Whitebeard and Garp in there too. And then in the modern day, it's more like, okay, it's a Whitebeard for a while, and then probably maybe Kaido, who knows, who has the title, right? Herald just had that on lock for like 2 centuries or something. Until Rox came along, it was just the Herald show. And that was actually like a major part of his character, which was like him having to learn that just because you're stronger than everybody else doesn't mean that you're better than them or you shouldn't treat them right and everything, right? So that's something to consider. It's kind of out of the blue, but Oda basically established Herald as like this dude that we didn't know about, but who turned out to basically be like the world's Whitebeard, but for 10x the time that Whitebeard was, you know? Henchme976 says Herald only had bum asses for competition until Rox. That's probably true. Like, this is a harder era for sure. Like, the post-Rox era is a much harder era to be the strongest in, right? But then, to be fair, Herald probably was the strongest after this next chapter, right? He probably goes back to being the world's strongest, besides Emu. We don't really count Emu, right? Rocks dies. Who's the world's strongest now? Oh, it's probably just back to being Harold, right? So you can say that, but at the same time, it's just like, but it is what it is, right? Like Rocks came along, and then Harold was still as strong as him. So he never really stopped being number one. He shared the spot. Like from a historical standpoint, Harold was number one basically for like God knows how long. Let's say a century, right? Like 100 years. And then there's like a little brief window where like Rocks comes up, and then they're like tied. Probably like a 10-year window or something. I forget the timeline. Probably tied for 10 years. And then it just goes back to Harold being the strongest again for some time. Until he dies, I assume. Jess says, don't you think Roger, Garp, Whitebeard did not surpass Rocks? So, I mean, you're asking me to do the ranking right now. I would just like the whole God Valley flashback to play out, and then maybe we get some more context. But at the moment, I don't know. So I'm just going to go with... at the moment, I'm just going to go with no. But it's possible they did. I would also clarify that I personally think that the Roger and Garp that we're seeing right now is their primes. I think there's nothing to suggest that this wouldn't be their primes. They're fighting against... They just fought and defeated a character who is above Pirate King level, presumably, right? A character who can split the sky on his own, like just an absolute, monster. So I just view it as like, this is probably their primes. This is as straightforward as it gets. Maybe it's not. Like, maybe Oda will clarify something later. But I don't know why people think that Oda wouldn't write them in their primes here. So I don't know. Henchby976 says, Roger needed the mustache buff, not prime yet. Eric says, no mustache. I just don't think that that's like... I don't even know what to make of that argument. Like, to me, it's just... I don't know. Mustache Roger gets the god treatment. He's 39 right now. Like, he's 39. This would be the it doesn't make sense because this is the most important battle. Like, this is their battle, right? Like, this is the legendary, iconic battle for them. This is the most important battle for their lives, right? There would be no logical reason for Oda to not write these characters in their prime yet. I think the mustache thing sounds like cope. I don't know. Eric says they literally had to bloom in the Rocks fight. I don't know if that was a hockey bloom. Look, okay, I'll say this. Let's let the God Valley stuff play out. If there's some more clarification that comes out after this, then that'd be good to know. But aside from that, it does seem like there would be no reason to say that they're not in their prime other than people... Like, I don't know what to say. Like, what does that mean? Like, why would they not be in their prime? Oh, it's a meme? Okay. No way is Rat King Harold above Roger. I think we kind of just have to deal with it. Yeah, people really believe Roger gets Hockey Bloom later on after fighting Domir versus Rocks. How is Roger getting stronger? Yeah, there just wouldn't be... it wouldn't even make sense. There's no opponent stronger than him to do that against, you know? Yeah, Hockey Bloom's in battle. This is their hardest battle. Yeah. So, like, I would have hoped that we would have seen a Hockey Bloom here. That was my reasoning, too. But it looks like we didn't. Maybe there's still something more to go. We don't know yet. But it doesn't seem like it. It would be cool. Let's just wait and see. We know Roger isn't in his prime, though, right? The no-contact Conqueror's Hockey clash he had with Whitebeard during the Odin flashback was much more impressive. I understand people brought that up because I also felt like that was a sign that Roger wasn't yet in his prime. But I even talked about it in the latest video. That basically more so turned out to be Roger not going all out. We kind of got the impression that Roger wasn't that strong until the Rocks fight began. And then we saw that basically he's doing as much work as Garp is doing, right? So, if anything, it's kind of like... It's the same... One, it's very possible that Whitebeard just wasn't at the level yet to be doing a gigantic sky-splitting clash. That's entirely possible, first of all, right? Because really with those type of clashes, both members need to be on that level. We saw, like, just because Zoro got Advanced Conqueror's Hockey, Yamato got Advanced Conqueror's Hockey, that doesn't mean, like, Yamato's sky-splitting with Kaido. Even Luffy initially didn't sky-split with Kaido. He had to come back, and then they were able to sky-split, right? Number two, characters don't characters who can split the sky don't do so in every clash, right? It's not like every single blow between Kaido fighting Big Mom is splitting the sky. Every single blow between Luffy and Kaido is splitting the sky, right? It's kind of just when characters go all out at that Yonko level, they split the sky, right? The one thing we do know is that Rox by himself was capable of splitting the sky, right? Rox solo was capable of splitting the sky, implying that Rox by himself is capable of doing something that two Yonko going all out in a clash kind of together need to do, right? So the fact that Roger and Garp were able to overcome a character with that sort of mass of hockey behind him suggests that they should both at least be Yonko level themselves right now, right? I feel like people fixate too much on certain things because, like, it's like, well, this clash between Roger and Whitebeard didn't exactly mirror that clash that they had in the Odin flashback, and that's true. But were they both swinging for the fences here? Number one, and two, were they both on the same level? I don't think Whitebeard's on Roger's level just yet, because if you remember, on top of that, even before that, a lot of people were really excited by what Garp was showing. Like, Garp had that moment where it seemed like all three Yonko were running from him, so people were like, holy shit, Garp is probably the strongest at God Valley after Rox. And then people pointed to Roger clashing with Whitebeard and being like, that means that Roger's not yet as strong as Garp, right? Turns out, again, Roger just wasn't, he wasn't doing everything he could. Once the actual fight with Rox started, then it became clear that as strong as Garp was being portrayed, Roger was being portrayed as his equal. Eric, thanks for the 5. Garp and Roger literally almost kill each other many times after this Rox fight. Theoretically, they push each other past this point. Do they almost kill each other many times after this one? Because it's after this one they actually become more chummy. So that intent to kill probably goes way, way, way down, right? Because they became allies. They could theoretically maybe push each other past this Rox fight. But, like, let's just be, like, this is their most iconic battle. Like, this is it. Like, why would Oda write Roger and Garp being mysterious? Like, why wouldn't he just write them being at their strongest here? I would ask you that for narrative reasons rather than your personal power scaling preferences. Why would he write this as being a... Why would he even write a fight if this is the Roger and Garp fight that we're going to see? And he's taking us to the past for their most iconic and most important battle. Why would the author say that, oh, but these characters are actually still underdeveloped? Like, why would he not write them being in their physical primes? What would be the reason outside of you just feeling like, well, I don't prefer that? Because there's no reason, right? It'd be like, oh boy, I can't wait to go see Joy Boy fight Emu, and then we go see the Joy Boy versus Emu fight, and then after the fight, people are like, well, maybe we don't know if that was Joy Boy's prime yet, though, right? It's like, why would the author even take us back to see that fight unless it was in their prime? Because it's the start of Roger's journey? His journey to find the poneglyphs is different than his journey overall. He's been a pirate for a long time at this. He's been a pirate for 20 years at this point, and he's not a bum pirate. He's literally the legend. The era is stated. The narrator explains that this is Roger, Rox, and Garp's era. Roger is like a celebrity at this point. We even saw at Shacky's bar and stuff. Like, Roger is a huge deal. Roger is like he's a huge deal. Right now, he's just second in the pirate world to Rox. This is not the start of his... Like, you could argue it's the start of his, like, poneglyph journey, but in terms of his status as a pirate, this isn't, like, rookie Luffy at Marineford or something. Like, Roger is basically the number 2 pirate in the world already, right? That's, like, he's the number 2 pirate in the world. And then after this, literally after this battle, he's the world's number 1 pirate. He's the strongest pirate in the world. I just don't get why... What is the argument? Eric says, that's not narratively sound. You must grow on your journey. But that's an argument that comes from, like, well, I think this would be good writing, But I've learned to not use I think this would be good writing as narrative justification for Oda's for what the decision is. Kurakami Najimi says, no agenda. If that's his prime, I genuinely think the flashback as a whole brings down his character in every way. I would agree that if that is Roger's prime, it is probably a little bit underwhelming. I mean, the thing is that it's tricky because I feel like Oda may not be as good at communicating certain things as, like, we would like. Because, like, for example, remember when Rocks, like, one-shotted Garling or just destroyed Garling, right? In Oda's mind, it might be like, look how crazy strong Rocks is that, like, he's able to do that to Garling, because in Oda's mind, he knows how strong Garling is, right? But then for us, it's like, okay, you just took out Garling. That's cool, but that doesn't tell us that much, right? And so then from Oda, he's like, now I'm going to Dami Reversi Rocks, and then Roger and Garp will defeat him. Maybe from Oda's perspective, it's like, he's like, see how crazy strong Dami Reversi Rocks is? Like, this is the most powerful enemy imaginable, right? This is like the craziest person that could possibly be defeated outside of Emu himself. And then Roger and Garp together did it. From Oda's perspective, that might be like, that is obviously cool enough for Prime Roger, Prime Garp as a showcase of their abilities. But for us, the reader, it might feel like Oda skipped some steps in that, well, we don't fully understand how strong Base Rocks is even supposed to be, right? We're kind of just making assumptions at that, right? Maybe Garling was supposed to be used as a way to hype up Rocks, but we don't know how strong Garling's supposed to be. That off-screen Admiral doesn't help, right? So, like, it feels like a lot of skipped steps, because, like, the way we could be looking at it is if Oda had taken the steps to establish that, let's say, if Oda had already established concretely that Rocks is as strong as, like, any pirate we've ever seen, like, as strong as Whitebeard, Kaido, etc. in their primes, and then Oda went and established, or, like, stronger, right? And then Oda established that now Rocks has been Dami Reversi'd, so now he's even more powerful. Now he's, like, 2 times as powerful or something. Isn't this insane? Then seeing Roger and Garp together take him down has more concrete meaning behind it, and I don't think anyone would be like, that wasn't Roger's prime. It'd just be like, well, they teamed up to defeat something that's, like, far beyond Pirate King level, so of course that's got to be their primes, right? But I think Oda may have skipped some steps power scaling, because everything's vague, right? Like, Rocks, Dami Reversi'd Rocks takes out Whitebeard, Kaido, Big Mom. You could argue Whitebeard or whatever, but the Yonko aren't able to stop him or whatever, right? But it's vague how close the Yonko are to their full strength, right? And then he takes out Garling even before Dami Reversi, but we don't know how strong Garling is. So it's all like, maybe we consider this whole thing more impressive for Roger and Garp as we go further in the story and get more context. Who knows? Eric says, that's not true. I'm going off One Piece's own logic and narrative standards in general. Look, I went off of One Piece's own logic and narrative standards, and I thought the raid was going to fail, right? And I put out a shit ton of videos explaining why this is the traditional narrative structure beyond One Piece, but also the one that One Piece in general uses, right? It's just, sometimes that's not going to be the way things play out, man. We just got to go by what we're given. I think if we're at a point where it's like, well, the mustache was what made him the strongest, I don't know. More just black build. I'm just saying, like, look, I would love for, if this is not Roger and Garp's prime, right, then I think that we need to be hoping that the God Valley thing goes on a little bit further, right? There is no reason for Oda to not be giving us the best version of Roger and Garp right now, because otherwise you just wouldn't, there's just no reason to write this as their one fight in the story. Like, the only reason to go back in time to, at a certain point you have to assume that the author is showing you the heyday of certain characters, right? This being their most important battle, yada yada, right? So, and like everything, like, it's also just like, Roger is literally the strongest pirate in the world at this point, right now that Rocks is down. He's the strongest pirate in the world. Garp has been established to be actually by far the strongest marine at this point, right? Because, like, Admiral, Rocks was Rocks was, like, taking care of Admirals like nothing already, like, a decade ago, right? And Garp just had to fight Dami Reversi'd Rocks and all this shit, right? And the Marines only called in Garp to save all the Celestial Dragons, no Admirals, right? So Roger is by far, or not, sorry, Roger is the strongest pirate in the world. Garp is by far the strongest marine in the world. This is their primes. Like, this is this is probably it. Like, this is probably it. You know? Man, I need water. Hold on. Okay. I'll answer this real quick and then grab some water. Marco, thanks a lot. What if Emu is going to have another clash with Roger and maybe Garp? Look, if there... I might be wrong if Oda continues to show us more in this flashback. My argument is simply like, there's no reason for us to go through this flashback of these characters, like, in their heyday. But then Oda also be like, okay, but their prime is also some vague period of time that you're just never going to get to see. That's slightly after this, right? So maybe this flashback goes on a little bit. Maybe the fight even goes on a little bit. And then we get to see more from Roger and Garp, right? Maybe we get to see a hockey bloom or something. I would love to see that, but I'm not, like, pitting my hopes and dreams on that. Maybe we get to see that. But my point is, like, whatever level we have seen from Roger and Garp by the end of this flashback, I'm going to assume is the best that they've got that Oda wanted to show us. Whatever the final level that Oda shows us of them by the end of this. Marsai Mitchum, thanks for the 5. You know the writing is rough when Prime Kaido looks better than Roger. I don't think Prime Kaido looks better than Roger. But, I mean, that's... because I view Dami Reversi Rocks as, like... kind of like fighting, Kaido on steroids, I guess. And Roger did pretty good in that fight. JWP, thanks for the 5. We'll see once we get back to Elbaf and get more context of how much of a buff Dami Reversi is. Guess how much of an amplifier you think it is. Best guess of how much of an amplifier you think it is? I don't know. It's intentionally vague by Oda. Very intentionally vague. I have no idea. I feel like it's somewhere between, like... maybe, like, 50% stronger to 2x stronger or something. Maybe that's too much. Maybe that's too conservative. I have no idea. Yeah, we'll get a better idea once we get back to Elbaf. I also am curious how things go down against Dami Reversi Herald. Because, like, you needed the strongest pirate, arguably, of the last, like, 40 years, 30-something years. You needed the strongest pirate and the strongest marine ever combined to defeat Dami Reversi Rocks. Who the fuck defeats Herald, you know? Yeah, because it needed 2 almost rocks powered characters to take him down. Yeah, so maybe it's 2x or something like that. I'm gonna let the dogs out real quick and grab a Coke and grab water. Alright. Oh, shit. Okay. Hello. Yeah, if Loki is above Roger, it'd just be insane. Alright. Henchme976 says Loki's the only Chad giant among these disappointments. I think it's so cool how Oda slowly let it, like... because Loki being revealed was like, oh shit, this is actually like a really big, like finally a really strong Elbaf giant. So that was cool. And then the more we got to know Floki, it was like, oh damn, maybe he's even like Yonko level or something like that. But then the story progressed, and we got Harold. And Oda told us that Harold was basically like ruling the seas for like 100 years. And I was like, okay, well, how strong is that actually? Because was everyone just like weak back then? And then Harold fights Rox. And it was like, oh shit, Harold is equal to Rox. But Rox was a guy that's been hyped up for so long. And then we finally got like Rox and Harold's like actual fight, and it was like, holy shit, like is Harold just like tied for number one strongest character that's not Emu or Joy Boy? And then it's like, okay, well then that means that Loki's actually a disappointment. I thought that Loki, like, at first you assume that Loki is stronger than Harold, especially because we've heard that Loki's killed Harold, right? Then the further we go, it's like, god damn, is Harold even stronger than Loki? And now it's like overwhelmingly likely that Harold would be stronger than Loki. All right. Let's get into this tier list. Hold on. So here's the thing. Might have to snip some images. Make a template. Oh no, let me search if this exists. One Piece Flashback. One Piece flashbacks. Here's the thing. I don't want flashbacks. I want flashback characters. So I wonder if it's going to show that. No. Okay, I might have to do this. Might have to do this myself. Okay. Let's take it from the get-go. We're doing only dead flashback characters. Only dead flashback characters. Did I address Chinjao yet? What's there to address about Chinjao? Garp one-shotted that dude. Also, let's get the stream likes up to 100 real quick. Garp had to train to beat him. Maybe Garp just severely overestimated Chinja. At the end of the day, it's a one-shot, so I don't read too much into that. Eric, are you holding on to Garp? Okay, time out. Garp had to train to beat him, right? That's like saying that because Mike Tyson like hit some he hit the bag for a few rounds before a fight, that means that Mike Tyson had to get stronger in order to beat his next opponent. That doesn't make sense. There's a different Wait, Eric, do you think that like any fighter, any boxer or whatever, they just like after they hit their peak, they just never hit the bag again? Like they're just done? It's just like, well, now I just walk into any fight. I just walk into any fight ready to go. I never gotta like what? I don't think that makes sense, man. Like, I'm pretty sure everybody, like, you think because once LeBron hit his prime, he's stopped going to the gym to practice shots. He stopped putting up shots in the gym. You think after 2016, Steph Curry was just like, cool, I don't need to. It doesn't matter who we're playing tomorrow. I'm never going to practice again. That's not what happened, but nice straw man. I mean, that's what I remember. But maybe if you can tell me the chapter, I can look it up and we can compare. From what I remember, it was something like Garp destroyed several mountains in preparation or something like that, right? Yeah, just give me the chapter number and I can check it out. At the end of the day, it's a one-shot, so I don't really know what the uh, the argument is. All right, let's pick out flashback characters. Yeah, I think characters are allowed to warm up, but I want to see the chapter. Okay. Let's see. Okay, you know what? I don't want to do a tier list. We're gonna do a ranking. We're gonna do a ranking. We're not doing a tier list. We're doing a ranking because it's gonna be too hard for me to find a full tier list for this, and I don't want to snip a bunch of images. All right, here we go. All right, here we go. Here we go. Here's the rules. All right. Here's the rules. Character. What the fuck? Must be dead. Character must be dead. I think that's the only rule. Yeah. So Brooke counts. Okay, okay. Unless do we have any volunteers for somebody who wants to create the tier list template? If we have any volunteers for someone who wants to create the tier list template, then that would be amazing. We're sure the other Giants didn't get Dami reversied instead of Harold. We're sure the other Giants. I feel like from the image that we saw, it looked like Harold was the one who got Dami reversied. Yeah, Jordan Vance. If you do it, then yeah, I will definitely make you mod. Anybody who does it gets made mod. If we don't have the tier list, I will do it. I'll do the ranking style here. If we do have the tier list, I'll obviously do the tier list template. But the guards getting Dami'd, it just doesn't look like it. What's a YouTube featured stream? What does that mean? Let's get the stream likes up. Yeah, let's get the stream likes up to 100 real quick. Jordan Vance, are you on it? If you're on it, then you don't have to do it. If you're on it, then we can do it. Let me just give you the characters. All we need is their faces. All right. We appreciate this, of course. Flashback characters starting from the beginning. So flashback characters who have to be dead. Let's say Queena. Let's start. Okay. Tier list makers find one. That would be great. Here, let me just give you a little word bank. All right. Word bank. Queena. Bellamere, and you guys tell me if somebody's missing. Queena, Bellamere, Higuma? No, we'll do tragic backstory characters. I think. You know what? Nah. Okay. Hold on. We could we could put is that no? But that's not a backstory. I don't think Higuma's a backstory character. Yeah, it takes place in real time. Higuma is a modern events thing. The story just skips 10 years after Higuma, but that wasn't a backstory. Oh, I see. But character must be dead in the modern day. So I guess Higuma can count. No, okay. Character must be dead in modern day. What I mean by that is like the character can't be because otherwise like Whitebeard counts as like a backstory character. Must be dead outside of flashbacks. Outside of flashbacks. Meaning character can't have appeared in actually it's very simple. Here's the simple rule. Okay, here's a simple rule. When Oda writes flashbacks, he changes the borders. He changes the borders. If the borders are white, it's not a flashback. It's just taking place in real time, right? So that's the rule. Versus like if we went to something like Nami's flashback, all the borders are black, right? That's the rule. Character must be dead outside of flashback. White borders, black borders on panels rule. There we go. I think that's the easy, literally the black and white way to look at it. All right. Garp versus Chinja was chapter 719. All right, let's see if we can square this. Because I don't remember the exact translation, so maybe I'm wrong here. He doesn't even say he trained. He said, I've prepared myself. I've prepared myself by smashing 8 mountain... That doesn't... Eric, that's not even close. That's not even close. That's not even remotely close. He just said he's prepared himself. He wants to give him a really good punch. He just did a warm-up. Dude, that's not close. That's just a warm-up. Okay. Moving on. Okay. Where are we at? I just want to point out the one thing. So people make fun of Chinjao a lot for no reason. Because Chinjao actually was a very deserving Conqueror user. Because I just want to show you a point of comparison, alright? Alright? Because people make fun of Chinjao being a Conqueror user. They're like, doesn't deserve it, yada yada, worst Conqueror user in the story. Chinjao had amazing Conqueror spirit. Because look at this. Look at this shit. Chinja, today's the day I'm going to finally crack that head of yours in two. I prepared myself by blah, blah, blah. Yeah. All your efforts will be for naught, for there's nothing in this world more sturdy than my head. I hope you're ready, Chinja. Ready to break all that bones in that fist you prize so dearly, Garp, right? So this means that this is like a battle that they agreed to. Like, Chinjao is not backing down. He's ready to fucking fight Prime Garp, right? Now let's compare. Now let's compare to the three Yonko, the characters who are supposed to have Conqueror's Haki. The fuck is this shit? Do you notice a difference in energy between Chinjiao and the three bums here? This is joking, by the way. I feel like people are going to get really upset. I shouldn't have to clarify that I'm joking, but you know what? Fuck it. Who's the real Conqueror's Haki user? Here or here? I think Chinjiao is fully deserving of being a Conqueror. Did he do well? No, he did not. He did not. Obviously, these three characters are a lot stronger than Chinjiao. But if anything, that makes him all the more deserving of having that Conqueror's Haki spirit. Like, come on now. Like, this is... And according, of course, to chat, this one wasn't even Prime Garp. This one was. I just, like... I think you can't... I think after we got this scene, you can never again shit on Chinjiao. Because Chinjiao is canonically the only pirate that was just like... him and Roger. They were the only two pirates that were canonically like, yeah, we want that smoke with Garp. No questions asked. We just want to fight him. He showed up. We're happy to fight him. I think that is a big... Like, you can never insult Chinjiao as being a bad Conqueror's Haki user again. This is the epitome of Conqueror's Haki. This right here, we try and scrub this from the record. We try and pretend this never happened. This is a planned duel. He literally thought that he could fight Prime Garp and win. This isn't even like he thought that, like, oh shit, I'm against Prime Garp. He actually thought going into this that this is in his favor. All right. Anyway. No more making fun of Chinjiao. He had the spirit for it, guaranteed. You can make fun of how strong he was, but the Conqueror's Haki thing, that's set now. Chinjiao the GOAT. Yeah, Chad Zhao. All right, we got Quina, we got Bellamere. We got Hero Look. We got, what does that say about Shiki then? Shiki was only willing to attack Roger when we had the giant fleet, and Shiki versus Garp and Sengoku, that was obviously an example of why Shiki probably does have Conqueror's Haki. I feel like Shiki's probably a Conqueror's Haki user, but that was also a suicide mission. That wasn't even as much... It was very impressive, right? It's very impressive. I'm not trying to downplay that. But it's important to keep in mind that Shiki basically just said, fuck it. Like, that was a man who had felt like he'd lost all of his dreams. Because his dream was to team up with Roger and take over the world. And that was just him basically throwing a giant, like, him just being like, well, I don't even give a fuck about anything anymore. Like, fucking free rock, fuck you guys. That was just him being, like, really, like, he had fallen off the deep end when he went to go do that fight, you know? Which, again, I guess that's part of being a strong-spirited character to a degree, but, like, he kind of went insane. I mean, it also is consistent. Shiki's probably a Conqueror's Haki user as far as I know. Alright, Hero Look. What is next after Hero Look? Then we get to Alabasta. Alabasta has nothing. Then we get to Skypiea. So then Nolan Colgara, right? Nolan Colgara. Then we're moving along, I guess, Olvia, Clover, Tom. Tom, Olvia, Clover. We used to have Saul on here. Saul would have swept this list up. But he's now gone. Tragically removed from this list. Tom, Olvia, Clover. Who else we got? Do I have to put fucking Yorkie? Yorkie? Yorkie. Continuing on, we got Marineford shit. No one prominent enough from the Marineford stuff. Flashback wise. Fisher Tiger. Otohime. Punk Hazard. We got Corazon. I guess we got Scarlet. Corazon. Scarlet. What's after that? Corazon, Scarlet. And we're on to Whole Cake. I think Whole Cake's all good. I guess Sora? Does Sora make the cut here? Saul is tragically alive. Yeah. Let's say Sora makes the cut. I guess just barely. Wano, we got Odin. Toki? Odin, Toki? Odin, Toki. Egghead, we've got no one. Oh, Ginny. Egghead, we got Ginny. And then we got Rox and Harold. I think this is our list. I think this is a solid list. That girl from Kids Flashback. I could add Mother Carmel. Mother Carmel's not like a tragic flashback figure. These are meant to be like, let's clarify, good guy characters only, or like protagonist figures only, characters we are meant to feel sad for. Let's do that. Roger in Flashback? No, Roger's not a Flashback character. All the Strats? I think we've covered everything. Is there anything missing? If not, then Jordan Vance. This is what we're looking for. Chopper's pre-time skip design? That's funny. Jordan Vance, halfway through so far. Thanks so much, man. Appreciate it. Everybody shouts in chat to Jordan Vance for covering this. Everybody shouts in chat to Jordan Vance, because I do appreciate that. Normally, TomTom is able to do it, but I forgot to tell him beforehand. And then if I don't tell him, then I'm kind of doing it awkwardly on stream at the same time. Why wouldn't Roger be a Flashback character? Because it's the first fucking page of the story. No offense, but that's, you know, the entire story began with him. Jordan W. Vance, yeah. Lost sister, nah, not significant enough. Not. Senor Pink's wife. Oh, I guess Senor Pink's wife, but I don't think she's significant enough. I don't think Chochu's owner Law made up his Law made up his Flashback for people to feel sad for him. Roger doesn't count. The whole story starts with Roger. It's the first page. It's the first page. It all starts with him. Then we cut to later on, which is Luffy's around and stuff. But he's the first character that we meet. It can't be a flashback if it's where the story is starting. This is a flash forward by definition. The story starts with this event and then it moves forward to this event. I mean, the rule is simple, which is just the borders. White borders versus black borders, right? So this is by definition not a flashback. It's done with the white borders, not the black borders. Even if you want to debate the flashback, flash forward thing, we have a pretty simple rule to determine. It's referring to past tense. There was a man who took everything in this world. That's fair, but I feel like the narrator can be speaking in flashback, whereas the events that are happening here... No, that's a good argument. Maybe I'm being stubborn. The words he left on the verge of death drew people throughout the world to the sea. Because if the narrator's saying it... No, because the narrator also speaks in past tense and a lot of times when things that are currently happening. Because there'll be an event that's happening in real life, and then the narrator will say that the events that happened here would eventually do this or this, right? or this was the start of something like that. Like this was the start of like a snowball effect that led to this or that, right? So the narrator sometimes speaks in past tense in general. So I feel like that's not correct. I'd rather go by my simple rule, which is just white borders, black borders. That tells us if it's flashback or not. Because the narrator does generally speak in in a past tense a lot. Thanks, Jordan Vance. Again, I mean, we could debate this a lot, but this rule makes it pretty clear, right? Like Oda tells us when it's a flashback or not. He just does the borders thing. That boar that Odin cut in half, the boar still lives. The boar does still live. Luffy's part says 8 years later. I don't think Luffy's part says 8 years later, right? Just says 1 year ago, blah, blah, blah. I don't think Luffy's part clarifies later on. Rouge is one panel on screen. I think Rouge is too minor. Jordan Vance says, I got all picks putting in the tier now. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Thank you, thank you. Pell's a real character. No, Pell's alive. Pell's all good. Orochi's family. Roger had so much aura, chapter 1. Yeah. Sometimes it's better to just let the character have the aura, you know? Rouge had to be something to snap Roger out of his simp phase. Oh, fuck. Yeah, we got rocks. Anuj says, Morge, I think you missed my super. Oh, I'm sorry, man. I think I did. Oh, shit, I did. I'm sorry, man. Anuj, thanks for being a Yonko team member for 3 years, man. 3 years and 2 months. Thank you. I'm sorry about that. What do you think the circumstances of Loki's rampage was, and why would Shanks get involved? How could Dom eat Harold even lose? Still don't get it. Okay. I think this is genuinely so difficult to figure out, because it's like, even like, let's say I'm being very generous with how strong I think Shanks is, right? Let's say I think Shanks is like equal to Roger at God Valley or something, right? If he's as strong. Loki would have to be at least as strong as like Garp then for them to overcome Dom University Rocks. Or like Harold. I know that people argue that there's a lot of other giants involved, but the other giants are absolute fodder. Like in general in One Piece, fodder doesn't make a difference in those type of battles, right? Because keep in mind, like Jarl, who is like the strongest giant around outside of like, you know, the actually strong giants, Jarl lost to 5-year-old Big Mom. Like 5-year-old Big Mom could tear through most of Elbaf, right? So those other giant warriors don't mean anything, right? We saw what Dami Reverseed Rocks did to like fucking 31-year-old Big Mom, you know? So imagine a bunch of fodder that 5-year-old Big Mom, like Dami Reverseed Rocks basically did to adult Big Mom what 5-year-old Big Mom was able to do to like Jarl and those giants, right? So the other giants just don't matter. They're irrelevant. They should be irrelevant unless Oda wants us to believe something that doesn't make any sense, you know? It's kind of like when Rox was trying to fight Garling and all those other Davy Clan members. At the end of the day, the other Davy Clan members don't matter, right? Like Garling was the only problem that he had to fight, right? He just kind of wiped the floor with the rest of them. So the other characters shouldn't matter. Do you just need the name? Oh, to get to it? One of the images was cropped badly. Don't even worry about it, man. If there's any adjustments, I can probably just upload it myself. Do I need the name? Oh, for what to go to? Do I need the name? Yeah, Yeah, I guess the name would be good if I could look that up. That would be helpful. Otherwise, could you send it? Could you, if you have Twitter or email, if you want to send it through either of those methods, that would be appreciated. Or if you can tell me the name, I can look up. Eric J.O., thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 25 months. Morge, who you got? Current Zoro or current old Gaban? If Zoro can tap into like his peak abilities, then I got Zoro. But if you said like Zoro that was fighting Lucci versus Gaban, absolutely Gaban. Zoro's issue right now is he doesn't have a hold. He doesn't have a handle on stuff, you know? Yeah, if old Gaban is almost Rayleigh level, then he wins. Yeah, I just feel like the Sommers showing was pretty. It's it's pretty significant because he's got like it's several things, right? No, it's you can ignore the Sommers showing, right? You can even just look at like Gaban, like how Luffy and Zoro reacted to fighting Gaban in the first place. You know, like Gaban looked really good. He looked really good. Obviously, Luffy didn't go all out. Zoro didn't go all out or whatever. And Gaban didn't want to like he didn't. I don't think he actually thought he could beat them both. But he did look really good. He was able to kind of toy with him a little bit, and they both had like some pretty, like they clearly were very very impressed by it and shocked by his strength. Yeah. Okay, it's called One Piece Flashback Characters on Tier Maker. Thanks so much, man. Thank you. All right, let's take a look. I'll make you mod in 1 second. One Piece Flashback Characters. Probably just go to new tier list. Oh, these aren't new templates. I see. Give me a second. It's possible because it's so new, it might be a little hard for me to find. Give me 1 second. Oh, maybe it's this. Maybe I found it. Yeah, this seems pretty close. Yeah, I think you pretty much got, assuming it's this. Yeah, I think it's this. I think it must be this, right? Is this the one? Thank you, Jordan Vance. No worries, no worries. You are now officially a mod. Thank you very, very much for your help. I assume it's this. I assume it's this. I think links you can't really drop easily. All right, everybody say thanks so much for Jordan Vance setting this up for us. This is perfect. This is all the characters that we need. This is perfect. This is perfect. If people push hard, I could add Rouge, but I don't know. Rouge has such a minor role. JWP, thanks to the 5. Gaban has Future Sight and high-level advanced Conqueror's Haki. Zoro is generally operating with base observation and advanced armament, not even internal destruction. It's not really close. You're right, JWP. You're right. You're right on that. I think the argument in Zoro's favor would be, if people wanted to make that argument, would be like people might feel. And here's the thing with Gaban, which is that it's not just advanced armament or not just advanced conquerors. He has greater skill with advanced conquerors than Luffy does, even because he was able to damage the God's Knights and stuff. So like, there's even a level to what he's doing that the Luffy and Zoro don't have down yet. So that's the strong argument for Gaban. Sorry. The only argument you could maybe make for Zoro is that like, well, his peak Conqueror's Haki output might be greater, which I think is very, very possible, especially because Gabon's old, right? So I think that's an argument in favor of Zoro if you wanted to make that argument. But based on paper, what Zoro can actually do that we regularly see him do, it should be Gabon, I think. Other Worlds, JT, thanks for the 5. Started watching Lord of Mysteries. Prefer sub, but the dub is great. The series is great, and I see what you mean by the amazing animation techniques. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm glad you're enjoying it so far. I'm going to shill this one just because I think it's the craziest animated series I've ever seen in terms of production quality. And it is wildly captivating. It's just so out there that it's hard to, like... It's a Chinese Donghua. I think that's one of the reasons I'm pushing it is because I think the only reason it's not getting a ton of traction is because it's not a Japanese anime. So China is trying to get into the 2D animated scene this year. So they released To Be Hero X. They released Lord of Mysteries. Lord of Mysteries is a very famous Chinese web novel series that is a really, really gigantic, sprawling epic. Like, it's a gigantic story similar to One Piece. So it started being produced as an anime, basically this Donghua, whatever, this season. And again, it's just the most mind-blowing visual animation I've seen. Demon Slayer, when Demon Slayer is going hard on its Sakuga stuff, is obviously going to be just as good. But this is the first... But Japanese anime in general pick and choose their spots when to go hard. Lord of Mysteries is the first animated thing I've seen that is just like show that's just always Sakuga. Like, it's always cinematic, peak visual, whatever, beautiful atmosphere, music, all of that. The only thing is the plot is not well presented because it's overly convoluted because it's trying to fit in too much information into the season. That's why next season is set to be longer and stuff like that. That's the one difficult thing. It's genuinely hard to follow. But it's just like as an artistic work, it is really, really beautiful to experience. So I definitely recommend it to people. Yeah, the dub is really good for that. I was actually genuinely caught between, like, doing sub and dub. All right. Are we ready to go? This is everything that we need? Let me look at the list again. Queena, Bellamere, Hero Look. I think we're ready to go. All right. All right. Rouge? All right. We're going to start, but I want to do it kind of in order. I guess we start with Queena. Queena, here, look. The order doesn't matter. Order doesn't matter. All right, I think Queena we can start with just saying pretty straightforward, a B tier character. B tier character. No, maybe a C tier flashback character. As far as flashback characters go, I don't think that Queena is anything special. Bellamere, I think, is a solid A, if not. Where do we want to put Queena? Let's start with the poll. Let's just start simple. Let's start with simple. I think no one's putting Queena in A, right? So Queena A, B, C, D. Shout out to that guy that gifted me a sub. Yeah, say shouts to JWP. No diff by Down These Stairs. Yeah. I don't think Queena's bad. Like, I don't dislike her as a character. I'm just going to keep her in C. I think C makes sense. And then Bellamere, is that S or A? Solo Leveling is Korean. Solo Leveling is, yeah, but I think it's still made by a Japanese studio, like A1. Um, so manhwa, but produced by a Japanese studio, I think. And then I think Lord of Mysteries and To Be Hero X are based off, like, they're Chinese and made by Chinese animated studios. Bellamere. Let's see, S-A. I guess I can throw in B, but, like, I don't think she's below B for sure. I think she's, like, at least an A. After Queena, Oda realized he had to make the sexism more subtle. A. Okay. Yeah. Okay, let's do that. I think she's a great character. I think A makes sense. Clover. I think Clover's a solid B. I don't think I cared that much when Clover died, whereas Fisher Tiger I think is an S. I think Ginny is an A as well. I think her death scene is very sad and what happened to her is very sad, but she herself as a character I don't think is like anything crazy special. She's enjoyable, she's likable. I don't think she's like an S. You know? Harold had so much potential when he started. We still need to see where things take him. But right now I'm putting Harold as a C. Because fuck that dude. He's really disappointed. Dirty Fish and S tier? Yeah. Dirty Fish and S tier. Okay, Harold, I'm going to go ahead and put an S. For sure. I love Harold as a character. Phenomenal character. Does anyone disagree for Harold? I think if Harold comes through clutch with somebody, that could be really good. Like, to save or something, I don't know. Harold should at least be B. I think he could be A, B, C, D, depending on how you view him. Because, like, I don't actually dislike Harold that much. It's where I'm at right now in the story. You know? Just really fucking, you're seeing Rox go through all this shit. You know, and he's still defending Harold down to his final words. Okay, I can put Harold in B. I think he's a fair argument for B. Because I did actually really, like, if you guys remember, if I look at, like, my favorite Wano characters list, right? Best characters in Elbaf? Oh, this is best characters in what? Is this like higher? Oh, here we go. Oh, I shouldn't get in the habit of reusing these things. Okay, let's see. I think I had Harold really high at one point, and now I've dropped him all the way here. I think I had him really high. It's just current frustration with the character. JWP, thanks for the 5. First time hearing that Fisher Tiger climbed the red line and invaded Marijo alone, I thought he had more aura than Roger, lol. Yeah, that was insane. And now, you might actually still feel like he has more aura than Roger based on recent events. Anuj Agrawal, thanks for the 2. Ginny A too high with Queena, Clover, Harold all lower. I just don't think I care for Clover that much. Do we think Ginny's too high? Harold's a controversial character. That's why he's where he is. Ginny A, B, C. I agree that Ginny's not a... You know what? Ginny doesn't deserve to be in the same tier as Bellamere. That's true. No, I think that's true. I think I'm overrating her. Like, Bellamere feels like a classic character. I don't think Ginny's like everybody remembers I think Ginny, we remember kind of what happened to her, but the character itself I don't think is that. I'll put her top of B. I'll put her top of B. I think Bellemere could be an A as well, or S as well, though. Where did we do a vote for Bellemere? It seems like Ginny rounds out to about B. We're gonna do that. The anime gave Ginny a little bit more character. I do remember watching Ginny in the anime and liking that. Let's get Streamlabs up to 150 real quick. Okay. Noland and Kolgara. Let's do Kolgara first. I think my thing with, you know what? It's possible that maybe if we move Bellemere up one, then I'd feel more comfortable putting Ginny in A. Yeah, I think I'd like this. You know what? Let's do this. I like that. Kogara. Yeah, that's tight. I'm gonna put Kogara in A. I think Kogara, the pairing of Nolan and Kogara is interesting. I think Odin is an S character. I'd put Odin in S. Um, let's see. Okay, people really love Noland. Okay, Nolan and S. I can see that. Olvia I like quite a bit. I'm gonna put her in A. I think Olvia and Ginny I feel like similarly about. I think Olvia we just didn't get that much time with, but the stuff that we did get was really, really, really sad. I like the character a lot. I think that she just didn't. She wasn't the focal point. I don't think of that backstory. Um, Fun fact, like I think my one of the scene in One Piece that probably gets me the most or like makes me cry the most. It's generally Robin's backstory, but in particular, the scene where Robin is asking Ovia like, "Are you my mother? Please tell me blah blah blah. I've always wanted to hold your hand, etc." And then that sort of breakdown scene between the two of them. That's actually my probably the scene in One Piece that I think of that probably gets me the most. I don't know why. That's just maybe just stuck out at the time. Um, yeah, I put her in A. I put her in A. Oh, JWP doesn't like Ovia. I think A makes sense. I think like B is characters kind of like solid. A is good characters that just maybe they needed a little bit more to make it to S tier. And then C is the stairs, right? I feel like Otohime I put in A. I just wasn't as compelled by a lot of Otohime's stuff um, as I was with Fisher Tiger. But I could definitely see her being an S. Anuj, thanks to the two. Kagara A and Nolan S. Too many Zoro fans here. Wait, what? Oh, because he's a swordsman? I don't think that's why. I think it's more so because Nolan played the bigger part of that backstory, and I think Nolan had a more tragic end. The backstory starts with our focus on Nolan. It's him arriving there. Kolgar is kind of a dick too initially. Like Nolan's just trying to save everybody there. It is the Nolan and Kolgara flashback, but no matter how you spin it, Nolan is the main character of the story. And his final execution scene is like one of the darkest things in One Piece, period. Like, it's pretty fucked. Like, he just told the truth and everything, and he's like, actually, like, it's pretty dark. Yeah. I don't dislike Otohime. I'm splitting hairs S or A. Throw in B as an option. Okay, seems like we're averaging out at about A. Makes sense. Kogara was ignorant, but Nolan was a dumbass. Yeah, you could argue that. You could definitely argue that. Otohime is a dumbass and nowhere near the goat Wisher Weiger. I think the argument is that they both needed to, they both presented different avenues. Rox, easy S. Love Rox's character. Um, Scarlet, I think a simple B. He's not like a bad character. Or I want to give C. She wasn't the best Bob Dasaji. Toki's definitely a C. Toki's definitely a C. Toki kind of sucked. Kind of pointless. Rock's top of S. Yeah, Rock's phenomenal. We'll do an S ranking when we get there. Yoki D. And then who's this? What's this? This is all the One Piece characters? Is that just all the One Piece characters? All right, well, we'll leave them alone for the moment. C Scarlet. What do we want to do with let's see. Where do we want to put Scarlet? B, C, D. Yeah, Scarlet wasn't that good because I think these are at least memorable characters. I think Scarlet's a C. I don't think people can tell you off the top of their head what Scarlet's character is like. Scarlet D? Yeah, all right. Fuck it. Let's put her there. I think she's one of the most forgettable ones. Or I guess people are averaging it out to C. Okay, you know what? We can average it out to C. That's fair. Then what about let's do some of these and then see. All right. What about Sora? I personally think Sora has to be. I don't think Sora can be B, so I think she's either C or D. I don't think she's like a bad character, of course. She's just there briefly. Also, let's get the stream likes up to 150 real quick. Okay, C for Sora. Guess that's fine. And then what about Toki? Why is Yorkie F? Yorkie's not F. Okay, again, we average it out to about C. Okay, makes sense. All right, then how do we feel about Tom? I think Tom is the most underrated flashback character in One Piece. To me, I think he's maybe the most underrated One Piece character. Period. I think it's really just because of the timing of everything. Because he unfortunately, like the Frankie flashback, unfortunately lives in the shadow of the Robin flashback, which comes like 30 chapters. Like it's there's so much other stuff happening in the arc that while Frankie has a very good flashback, it just doesn't. I think a lot of his moments end up being drowned out by um, other great things happening in the arc. And like Frankie's story becomes like a really great part of the arc, but it's also a storyline filled with so many great character storylines that it just gets swallowed up a little bit. I personally have, for me, I have him in S, but I imagined it like if I gave it to the people, I kind of guessed it would probably end up in A. I think that there's maybe a little bit less love for Tom. I think he's a forgotten character, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just what happens. Um, but yeah, I could see him being an A. Let's put him there. I think A is perfectly fair for him. I think A is perfectly fair. I also think that, you know what, one big thing is a lot of these characters. So, one thing that stands out about each one of these characters is that they have very iconic death scenes in One Piece. Rocks is still yet to come, right? But Hiruluk, absolutely iconic death, one of the most important quotes in the story. Fisher Tiger, very, very memorable death with him refusing the blood and everything. Bellamere, I think her death scene is a pretty notable one. It's one of the sadder ones in One Piece. It's our first big death scene in One Piece with like Nami and Nojiko crying, Jen like getting cut up while he tries to save him and everything. Odin, obviously the iconic boiling scene. I think that's the defining thing of his character, right? Nolan, similarly, his death, the way that he dies, the execution scene, very, very tragic scene in One Piece. And then Rocks, I think he's about to, like, his death, we're in the middle of it, right? But it is going to be one of the more tragic ones, right? I think that's a big commonality between a lot of these characters. Tom's death was not on screen. It was just him being arrested and taken to Annie's lobby. So he didn't get as climactic of a closeout. It was him basically standing up and taking the blame for Frankie. I find it to be a very, very powerful scene, but I understand why he doesn't leave quite the impact as some of these other characters. Whoa, Marco Saint, you got to slow down. Not as much. Well, I guess you're not spamming. You're just chatting a lot. Spamming is saying the same thing. This guy's tripping. Nolan is easy S tier. Nolan is an S. He's right here. Tom being below Odin is blasphemy. Yeah, I can show you guys my ranking after this. I'll show you guys my ranking. Corazon. I imagine Corazon is probably... Well, here, hold on. Yeah, let's just do the Corazon poll. Thank you again, Jordan Vance, for putting this together. Yeah, I kind of figured Corazon would be an easy S. I'm not as high on Corazon as a lot of other people. I'm just not. But yeah. All right, we're going to do a poll for best flashback character after this. We're going to do a poll for best flashback character. And, yeah. We'll do poll for best flashback character. And then I'll do a quick ranking of my favorite flashback characters. All right. Hiruluk, Fisher Tiger, Bellamere, Odin. I just didn't want people waiting here too long. That's totally okay, man. I appreciate it. I really appreciate it. Thank you for hopping in. It makes my heart feel good to see Hiruluk storming the rankings like this. But yeah, everybody's getting some love. These are all great characters. Hiruluk and Odin is competitive, it looks like. But it looks like Hiruluk has it by about 15%. Okay. So Hiruluk takes that batch. Then we got Nolan. Oh, man, this is tough stuff. All right. Best character. Nolan, Rocks, and Corazon. I think that's gonna be a Tough matchup. Kushal says a man doesn't die until he's forgotten. It's hard to beat certain quotes when Oda gives you those quotes, you know? All right, we got rocks. We got rocks. And then lastly, so I think this is borderline unfair because Rocks has not gotten his death scene just yet, right? And as I said before, I think next flashback we'll probably get like a really tragic finale for Rocks, right? Unless the fight keeps going or something like that, right? But as I said before, most of those characters in S tier, absolutely iconic, very memorable deaths in One Piece, right? So it's kind of hard to compare because, like, Hero Look, obviously he would be a beloved character even before getting to his final scene, but it's really his final scene that, like, truly caps off the greatness of that character, right? It's a little bit unfair, but, you know, let's do it. Similar thing for me with Odin, which is, like, I don't think I wanted to like Odin, but I don't think I liked Odin. Like, I wasn't able to truly like Odin that much as a character until the boiling scene. Yeah, this is going to be a tight one. Rocks might be best character of all time. I think Rocks need a... Like, I love Rocks' character so far. I want to see his, like... The real meat of his story is going to come at the end. Like, every character, right? Like, Kuma elevated to, like, absolute GOAT status with his final... Like, the final chapter of his flashback, right? Hero looks same thing. Odin, his conclusion. Corozona's conclusion. Rocks, we still haven't gotten the best part yet, you know? It's a little bit... I think it's a little bit unfair of a comparison, but yeah, it's tight. Get your votes in. Get your votes in, because, like, literally every vote here matters. It's a 50-50 split. Yeah. I'll say once we get to... We're at 60 votes. It looks like Rocks is edging ahead. I'll say once we're at 65 votes, I'm going to call it. 62 votes. I know we got viewers in here. Once we get to 65 votes, I'll call it. If it's stuck at 62... Oh, it's 63? 62? If it's stuck at 62 for a long time, then 64? Okay, one more... Oh, man. It's closer than ever now. 65 votes. All right, we'll end it here. Looks like Rocks just about edged it. Just about edged it. It's fair. I mean, we've followed pretty much, like, we've been following this guy for like 5 straight chapters. More than that, no, like 10 straight chapters pretty much now. We've actually really been following Rocks' story. We've had him as the protagonist and, like, the central focus for more than any of these other characters. So you could say it's recency bias, but it's also just, like, he's had the most elaborate story and most character focus. So there's that as well. But it is basically 50-50. 67th was the tiebreaker. That's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah, I think you can't go wrong with either character. If I were to do my ranking, I would do this. I would remove Rocks from the equation because the story isn't done yet. If that's cheating, that's arguably cheating because then you guys had to... That is cheating. You guys had to vote on it. I should have to vote on it. But here's the thing. Here's what I would say. So, in a weird way, if you were to just ask me, like, hey, Morge, list your, like, 10 favorite One Piece characters, I think Rocks would end up on that list a lot. Like, he would be on that list for me. And I probably wouldn't immediately think of a lot of these characters. I probably wouldn't immediately think of, like, Hero Look or Tom or Fisher Tiger or like, a lot of these characters that I really like, okay? But if you're putting it to me in the context of, like, which is your favorite flashback character, then it kind of, like, forces me to compare flashback characters to flashback characters. Like, it forces me to compare in the mindset of, like, how I viewed them in the flashbacks. And so in that vein, I think I'd probably put Hero Look above Rocks because Hero Look made me feel more. But we also haven't gotten Rocks' conclusion yet, so I feel like it's not fair. If you were to say, like, Morge, list, like, your 5 favorite One Piece characters that aren't Straw Hats, Rocks would definitely be on that list. I don't think I would think of Hero Look right away. Oh no, Joggerwell, thanks for the 2. Can we do Saul versus Rocks if he didn't come back? Oh man. I think Saul would take it for me. I think Saul would have been the one dude outside of Rocks that would have been competing with Hero Look for me. That's one of the things that makes it so fucking sad for me. I think Oda did it perfect. Like, in that one flashback, we lost this dude. We lost her, great character. And then we also lost Saul, and it was just like a perfect... Like, sometimes it's better to just leave things sad. And that's what gives meaning to when you find other good things later on. Like, Robin lost all these people, but she got the Strahds. There's more meaning to that, in my opinion. There's more meaning to that, in my opinion. Sure, we can do Saul versus Rocks if Saul didn't die. If Saul stayed dead. Hero Look is so much worse in the manga. I experienced it first in the anime, so I can't really compare. Looks like Rox still takes it. Yeah, looks like Rox is still taking it. Yeah, if I were to rank real quick, if I were ranking my favorite flashback characters, it would be something like this is my ranking. Ovi I actually have pretty high now that I think about it. I think I just like the character for some reason. I definitely have Hero Look 1, Bellamere 2, Tom 3. This is hard to rank. It's very hard to rank. There's no one from down below that I'd be moving up. I might have Ovia 4. You know what? You know what I'm noticing? I'm very biased towards the characters that are the parents of the Straw Hats. I'm realizing that. It's hard for me to rank characters that are like... Because there's two types... So what I'm noticing is that there's two types of characters here, right? So Rox falls into the second type of character. So there's a clear divide, right? This is why I'm having difficulty ranking. There's a clear divide. These 4, and similarly, I guess you could say Corazon. So, okay, just ignore the rankings right now. This is just the divide that I'm kind of trying to draw, okay? So, like, ignoring rankings. These type of characters right here are characters who they're an accompanying piece to a main character's story today, right? Corazon obviously lost technically not a Straw Hat, but he essentially had... he was the Straw Hat character that we were following, right? Like, he was the protagonist figure that we're following in the modern day, and we're following he essentially had Straw Hat level significance. He was basically written like a Straw Hat for like hundreds of chapters, right? He just didn't end up officially joining the crew, but you get what I'm saying, right? So these 5 characters are characters who are tied to backstories where it's very focused on their relationship. The entire backstory is their relationship with our modern day character, right? And sort of the impact that they're able to leave behind on that character, right? Ovia really should be swapped out for Saul here, but that is closer to the role that she plays, right? So these characters produce really strong emotions for me, particularly from their scenes where they finally have their final, moment with their young kid, Strahd or whatever, where they separate, they're lost, whatever, right? These characters are not really the same. These are characters who we more so focus on their stories rather than their dynamic with their child or anything. Like, Rox obviously had Blackbeard and everything, like, and that's a part of his story, but the story overall is focused more so on Rox, right? It's not really focused on Rox and his relationship with his son. Blackbeard's a small part of it. Odin's backstory, it had Momonosuke, but we barely get any panels time of Odin and Momonosuke, right? So same with like Otohime and Shirahoshi, right? These are flashbacks that are more so focused on the tragedy of the character themselves. These characters have like an added layer because it focuses on the tragedy of the character themselves, but also through the lens of the child that loves them, that we're following the story of them, following along the story with. So I think these characters have a natural bias towards, because they made me feel more strong emotions. So I remember those flashbacks more vividly. But then these characters are often characters that I would like more as individuals, if that makes sense. Like, again, if I was making like a top 20 One Piece characters list or something, I would probably think of Odin before I thought of Hiriluk. But if I'm thinking about like flashback characters, I prefer Hiriluk to like Rox and Odin and stuff. So it's, for me, it's a little bit hard to split up and grade. It feels like I'm grading apples and oranges. Like, Nolan, really, really tragic, obviously, but I think I feel more tragic seeing Tom's death, or Tom being arrested, just because I'm seeing it through the lens of like the Frankie Tom storyline, right? And that feels a little bit different. So it's just hard to compare. It's hard to compare. It's not the same thing. Anyway. But yeah, I hope that makes sense, everybody. Hope that makes sense. Wouldn't Otohime be for Jinbei or Fisher Tiger even? That's in the technical sense, but like with Fisher Tiger, like Jinbei is like a grown-ass man. He was like in his 20s or 30s. Jinbei really played, like, he's in the Fisher Tiger backstory, but I never feel like it's the Fisher Tiger and Jinbei backstory, right? Corazon and Law, like, you're reading the Law backstory, right? You're reading the Chopper backstory, and like Hiro looks like his parental loved one figure. Jinbei is in the Fisher Tiger backstory, of course. He's kind of like our avenue to like broaching the Fisher Tiger backstory, but it never feels like it's a backstory that's focused on Fisher Tiger and Jinbei particularly, and like Jinbei's love for Fisher Tiger or something like that. It's just through Jinbei's eyes, this is what he experienced. Same with like the Otohime situation. All right, everybody. I hope that makes sense. Yeah, that this is like a good point. Like, that's why comparing these characters. Let me just finish this. That's why I think comparing these characters is difficult, because these characters are often so like what Dobby Gregg said is Bellemere gets me the most emotional, while I think Fisher Tiger is the most interesting character, and that's a great point, because I think a lot of these characters are, in some ways, they're more, like, their own stories are in many ways, like, more interesting, right? Like, that's why Rox I would rate as, like, a more interesting, layered character than I believe any of these. But that's because I think these characters are often a little bit simpler and more one-dimensional, because they're meant to represent something simple for the child, right? Like, Hiriluk represents, like, this sort of, like, unconditional love, like a character who is able to give Chopper this unconditional love and this like belief in oneself and the power of dreams no matter what, right? Bellemere represents like family and the importance of like embracing one another, like the importance of staying true to your family. Corazon also represented unconditional love for Law. Like literally he's Corazon, he's heart. Tom was basically pride in one's work and like being true to oneself, right? These characters have more complex stories, right? Like Fisher Tiger's story is more, like he's a more complicated, like Nolan has a more complicated story. Rock's obviously a very layered character who goes through a lot. These characters almost need to simply represent simplistic ideals to some degree, because that plays better into a child's story. You could argue Otohime also falls into that category as well, but like there is some level of simplicity to and some level of complexity to both sides, but just saying like how their stories came across, right? Rox is he's the most interesting, layered character here, right? but these characters maybe produce stronger emotions because we get that death scene where the child is losing them. So, but Rocks, we haven't gotten his final moment yet, though. So it's hard to compare. I think a very difficult ranking list that we just had to do here. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. And thanks everybody for tuning in. Oh, wait, we got other stuff. It's literally just based on what we call the backstories. Oh, and Bawa says thanks to the two Gaimon's crew that left him behind ranking. Let's start with that. Gaimon's crew that left him behind ranking. I think they would rank in probably C, Brad Queen level. Just kidding. They would be D. They'd be Yorkie level. JWP, thanks to the 5. I'm literally just based on what we call the backstory. It's literally just based on what we call the backstories. Yeah, I guess so. Like the category. And, yeah, that's true. No, actually, I see what you're saying. You're saying, like, do we call it... Because we call it the Chopper backstory, right? We call it the Nami backstory, Chopper backstory, Frankie backstory. That is... Yeah, you're 100% right. Whereas we call it the Rocks flashback, the Odin flashback, the Nolan Kalgara flashback. Like, are we labeling it the Fisher Tiger Otahime flashback? We almost never call it the Jinbei flashback, right? Great point. I would think I was overcomplicating it, but you're right. That is the simple way to divide it up, which is just... the characters whose flashback, like, they're the star of the flashback versus the character who is, like, sort of the accompanying piece of the flashback. That's a very good point. Yeah. Good distinction. And with that, I will talk to you all later.